Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of the quietest, most medicated and most aggressively cheerful chapters in American history, the decade and a half when the US pharmaceutical industry decided the problem with the American housewife was a chemical deficiency and set out to fix it, not with therapy, not with anything she asked for. With green heart-shaped tablets, red capsules nicknamed Red Devils, and a tranquilizer so popular that by 1957, American pharmacists were filling one prescription for it every single second. If you enjoy this kind of calm, slow-burning, quietly damning history, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy drifting off to mildly disturbing, deeply factual history. A huge thank you to one of you for suggesting tonight's topic. I hope you're comfortable, I hope you're hydrated, and I hope nobody has left a 6-minute doctor's appointment recently and handed you something in a brown glass bottle. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always somehow 5 in the morning somewhere, and tonight that tracks more than usual. Dim the lights, turn on a fan, get comfortable, and maybe stay out of the kitchen junk drawer until we're done. Have you ever wondered how 200 million amphetamine tablets issued to World War II soldiers somehow ended up in the kitchen cabinets of suburban housewives a decade later? What exactly is housewife syndrome? And did any physician pause for even 6 seconds before writing it on a prescription pad? Could you survive a morning where the most medically rigorous part of your appointment was the crinkle of the examining table paper? The cottony detachment of Miltown. Was that a side effect? Or was that the entire product? Who was Mrs. Raymond? Why did her world begin and end in a kitchen? And why did a pharmaceutical company think submitting her to Congress was a good defense? Did anyone at Wallace Laboratories read Harris Isbell's 1958 paper about the seizures, or did it just find a comfortable home at the bottom of a filing cabinet? And seriously, 1,000% markup on a drug your doctor prescribed for feeling sad about the dishes? Congratulations, you've just woken up in suburban America, 1957. The kitchen smells like percolated coffee and something faintly medicinal sweet from the tablets in the drawer by the dish towels. The neighbours are close enough to wave at and far enough away that nobody is coming over. The brown glass bottle is rattling. Good luck. You stand at the kitchen sink in your robe at 7 in the morning, and you tap one small beige tablet out of a brown glass bottle into your palm. The bottle has a cork stopper and a label typed in your doctor's office. Take one in the morning. Take one with food if needed. Take one. You swallow it with tap water from a jelly jar that used to hold strawberry preserves. The bottle goes back behind the cereal where your husband keeps the coffee, where the children cannot reach. You wait for it to start working. Let's talk about the bottle. It's brown glass, a little smaller than your fist, and it shifts in your hand when you pick it up. A soft, medicated shuffle when you move it. Inside are 30 tablets, 1 month's supply, and your doctor wrote the prescription in 6 minutes, 4 of which were small, polite, and faintly procedural talk about the school year. The diagnosis on the label reads, nervous tension. This is the full clinical picture. 2 words. Your doctor has a notepad on his desk with a pharmaceutical company's logo embossed on the cover, because a man came through last Tuesday and left it there, along with a pen, a sample case, and a small pile of packets that are currently sitting in a drawer your doctor will get to eventually. The tablet itself is meprobamate, which the bottle calls Miltown, which the country calls a revelation. It was approved by the FDA in 1955, and within 2 years American pharmacists were filling 1 Miltown prescription every second, continuously all day, like a ticker tape that tastes like chalk. The drug costs Wallace Laboratories about 30 cents to produce per 100 tablets. It costs you $3 a month. The markup is roughly 1,000%, which is a pricing structure that would embarrass a concert venue. Nobody in 1957 is troubled by this. The feeling, when it arrives, is not happiness. It isn't calm, exactly. It's more like someone has placed a thin layer of cotton batting between you and the sharper frequencies of the day. The children are still loud. The dishes are still there. The particular silence of a Levittown street at 9 in the morning, neighbours close enough to see through the window, far enough to require no conversation, is still the geography of your life. None of that changes. The edges just blur a little. Enough to continue. A neighbour of yours, a woman named Carolyn, takes hers with coffee and describes the effect as finally being able to hear yourself think, which is either a recommendation or an indictment, depending on what you find when you get in there. She got the prescription from the same doctor. 6 minutes, same notepad. Her label says menopausal symptoms. Carolyn is 31. The Miltown martini is a real thing, by the way. Cocktail parties in Los Angeles and New York are serving them. Milton Berle has made jokes about the drug on television. Cheerful, publicity-scale jokes, leading some people to assume the drug was named after him. It was not named after him. It was named after Miltown, New Jersey, where Wallace Laboratories is located. Milton Berle is simply the kind of man who hears about a nationally consumed sedative and thinks, this one's about me. You put the jelly jar in the drying rack and go to make breakfast. The bottle sits behind the cereal, doing nothing, which is more or less the same thing you're being asked to do. Outside, the street is empty. The lawn is the correct length. Later you'll read somewhere that an estimated 32 million Americans are taking prescription tranquilizers, and that about 2/3 of those prescriptions were written for women. You won't read it this morning. This morning you have eggs to scramble and a school bus that arrives at 7:40 and a kitchen that does not care how you feel about it. The cotton batting holds. You sit on the examining table in your slip with the paper crinkling under you, and your physician asks you 3 questions in the order he always asks them. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? How is your husband? He writes on the pad without looking up, tears the page off, and hands it to you folded once. The whole visit takes 6 minutes. The receptionist stamps your chart, the door clicks shut, and you walk back out into the parking lot already holding the script for the next 30 days about what your doctor knows about this medication. He knows it works. He knows the detail man who visited on Tuesday said so. The detail man, a pleasant, brisk and faintly rehearsed fellow named Gary, or possibly Gerald, with a briefcase that smells like new leather and a sample case that smells like nothing at all, left 2 notepads, a pen with the Miltown logo embossed in gold, and a small packet of tablets on the desk before your physician had finished his coffee. Gary did not need a federal license to do this. There wasn't one. Your physician graduated from medical school sometime in the mid-1940s. His pharmacology training ran 2 weeks, which is roughly the amount of time it takes to get confident with a new television remote. He is a general practitioner. He is not a psychiatrist. Neither is the man down the hall, or the one across town, or the one who writes your neighbour Linda's prescriptions. About 85% of every tranquilizer prescription in 1955 is written by a general practitioner. Psychiatrists account for the rest. The math is not complicated. The diagnosis on your chart is written in pen, in his handwriting, and it says nervous tension. It might say anxiety state. On a thoughtful day it might say psychoneurotic complaint. If you've mentioned anything about being tired, or the children, or the particular quality of silence that settles into a ranch house at 3 in the afternoon, it might say housewife syndrome. That last one is a real diagnosis. It has its own billing code. It is written on real paper by real physicians every single day, without irony, because irony hasn't been invented yet for this particular situation. Now, here is what your prescription does not say. It does not say that Harris Isbell, research director at the Lexington Narcotic Farm in Kentucky, published a paper in 1958 documenting 22 cases of severe Miltown withdrawal, including 3 patients who had grand mal seizures, and sent it directly to the FDA and to Wallace Laboratories, who manufactured the drug. The FDA filed it. Wallace Laboratories filed it. A filing cabinet somewhere in New Jersey contains this information like a very calm secret. The paper does not make it onto Gary's notepad. A nurse named Patricia hands you a cup of water in the waiting room before you leave, because you look pale. She presses it into your hand with the focused attention of someone defusing something small. You drink it. She nods once, already turning back toward the desk. The prescription is for 30 days. At the pharmacy it costs about $3, which is what your accountant husband would call a reasonable line item if he ever saw the line item, which he won't. You hand over the cash, the pharmacist counts out the tablets, and the brown bottle goes into your purse next to your lipstick and your grocery list. By the time you pull out of the parking lot, somewhere in America, a pharmacist is filling another Miltown prescription, then another. They've been doing this every second, all day since 1956. The bottle settles in your purse, against your keys the whole drive home. You watch your physician write a single phrase on the diagnosis line of your chart, and the phrase is housewife syndrome. He writes it in cursive, in fountain pen, the way he writes everything. He does not look up while he writes it, and he does not pause to consider whether the phrase belongs in a medical chart. You do not ask what it means because you understand that he does not have an answer he plans to share with you. You also understand that asking would lengthen a visit he wants to be 6 minutes. The chart has other options. It has nervous tension. It has menopausal melancholy. It has psychoneurotic complaints and anxiety state. These are not diagnoses in the clinical sense. They're more like a menu of sympathetic-sounding phrases that point in the same direction, toward the same small bottle, with the same refill interval. Your physician is a general practitioner. He has 2 weeks of pharmacology training from medical school. He is making his best guess, and his best guess is that you need something to take the edge off. He is not wrong that there is an edge. He is just not asking where it came from. The prescription is already written before you finish buttoning your coat. He tears it from the pad with the practiced efficiency of a man who does this 40 times a day, which he does. The detail man who visited last Tuesday left a notepad with the Miltown logo, and that is what the prescription is written on. The branded pen goes back into his shirt pocket. The sample packet stays in the desk drawer for the next patient, or the one after. The room smells like isopropyl alcohol and a polished, brisk, and faintly impatient professionalism. What the prescription actually says, meprobamate, and the brand name, and the dose, and refill as needed. Refill as needed is doing a lot of work in that sentence. A month's supply runs you about $3 or $4, which, if you knew what Wallace Laboratories paid to produce it, would give you something new to feel anxious about. You don't know. The chart goes back in the folder, and the folder goes back on the shelf, and the shelf has a lot of folders on it. Mrs. Gallucci, the woman who comes in after you on Tuesdays, pats her handbag on the way out with the same small automatic gesture you've started making. She doesn't mention it. You don't mention it. There's an unspoken grammar to the waiting room that everyone has picked up without being taught. The slightly averted eyes, the magazines held just a little too close, the coats that go back on just a little too quickly. She nods. You nod. Both of you know this dance too well. The diagnosis follows you home in your coat pocket, folded into the prescription slip. Housewife syndrome. Not a disease with a mechanism, not a condition with a cause your doctor has recorded anywhere. Just a phrase that means, you are a woman, and something about that is not going smoothly right now, and here is a tablet for it. The tablet is round and white and costs slightly less than a cup of coffee at the diner on Route 9. It does not ask what the edge is. It does not need to. That's not actually what it's for. You fill the prescription at the pharmacy on the way home. The pharmacist puts it in a brown glass bottle with an aluminum foil seal and a cork, and the bottle taps the side of your purse the whole drive back. By 1957, there are roughly 1 million bottles like this opening across the country every single day. 1 Miltown prescription every second, filled by American pharmacists all day, every day, in pharmacies that are also selling aspirin and Brill cream and birthday cards with dogs on them. The bottle settles into the kitchen drawer between the rubber bands and the takeout menus. It is not hidden. It doesn't need to be. It's medicine. The doctor wrote it down. You hand the folded prescription to the man behind the pharmacy counter, and he reads it without expression and turns away to count tablets. The counting takes longer than the doctor's visit did. He pours the tablets from a large amber jug into a smaller amber bottle, types your name on a paper label, glues the label down, and slides the bottle across the counter with a typed sheet of instructions you will not read. He does not ask how you are. You pay him $3.40 in cash, and he does not give you a receipt. The bottle is brown glass. It fits in your palm, with room to spare. The cap is aluminum foil sealed, and it makes a small tearing sound when you open it the first time, a sound you will eventually stop noticing, the way you stop noticing the refrigerator hum. Inside are 30 tablets, white and slightly chalky, carrying a faint medicinal sweetness that lingers on your fingers for the rest of the afternoon. You put the bottle in the kitchen drawer, behind the rubber bands and the coupon for green stamps. The drawer closes. The drawer has been waiting for something to hold. What's in the bottle then? Meprobamate, branded Miltown. Synthesized in 1950 by a Czech pharmacologist named Frank Berger at a laboratory in New Jersey, approved by the FDA in 1955, and by 1957 filling at a rate of roughly 1 prescription per second across the United States. The pharmacist who just handed you your bottle will fill another before you reach the door. He will fill several hundred more before closing. The amber jug he poured yours from is very large. It has to be. A detail man named Gerald, pressed, polished, and unfailingly cordial, sample case in one hand, branded notepad in the other, visited your doctor's office last Thursday and left behind 3 packets of Miltown samples, a pen that says Miltown in cursive, and a laminated card listing approved uses. The card includes nervous tension, menopausal symptoms, and anxiety state. It does not include. Nothing specific is wrong. It doesn't have to. Gerald was not there to diagnose. Gerald was there to suggest, which is a different profession with better expense accounts. This is where the bottle becomes a routine. You take the first tablet with a glass of water at 7:30, after the children leave and before the dishes are done. The effect is not dramatic. Nothing lifts. Nothing resolves. What happens instead is that the sharp edges of the morning, the noise, the smallness of the rooms, the weight of the hours ahead go slightly soft. A pharmacologist would call this anxiolytic action. You would call it manageable if you called it anything at all. You don't call it anything. You do the dishes. By noon, Miriam from 3 houses down has stopped by to return a casserole dish, and she mentions, without being asked, that she's been on hers for 6 weeks. She sets the dish on the counter and adjusts it twice, carefully, as if the placement matters. It's working, she says, with the tone of someone reporting on a repair. She doesn't elaborate. You don't ask her to. The casserole dish sits between you like a third participant in the conversation. The bottle lasts 30 days. At the end of 30 days, you go back to the doctor, and the visit is 6 minutes, and he asks if the prescription is helping, and you say yes, because the alternative is explaining something you don't have words for yet. He writes another prescription on the branded pad. The pad says Miltown at the top, in the same cursive as Gerald's pen. You fold the prescription and put it in your purse. The pharmacist will be there when you arrive. He will already have the amber jug out. You bring the bottle home and you decide where it is going to live, and the decision is more involved than it should be. You consider the kitchen cabinet above the stove. You consider the drawer where you keep the rubber bands. You settle on the second shelf of the medicine cabinet behind the bathroom mirror, between the aspirin and the mercurochrome, where your husband's razor cannot accidentally knock it down, and where the children will not see it without standing on the toilet. You move the cough syrup forward to make room. You press the door twice before it clicks. The bottle is brown glass. The label says your name, your doctor's name, and a dosage instruction that fits neatly in 12 words. It does not say what you have. What you have is nervous tension, written in pen on a form at the office, in handwriting that looked like it was completed during a phone call. 6 minutes. 4 of those were small talk about the new subdivision going up on Route 9. You bought the bottle at Norbert Sloane's Rexall on Elm at 2 in the afternoon, which is the slow hour, after the lunch counter rush and before the school children arrive for their cherry phosphates. The store has a smell that is part camphor, part floor wax, and part the cold cream sample bottles by the front register. Fluorescent light, the long humming kind, runs the length of the ceiling. Norbert reads your slip, nods once, and disappears behind the half-glass partition. He returns 4 minutes later with the bottle in a small white paper bag, stapled twice at the top, which is 1 staple more than the bag requires. The Coca-Cola sign in the front window says nothing about any of this. The Coca-Cola sign has its own concerns. Where the bottle does not live then, not in the kitchen, because the kitchen is where the children are, and where your mother-in-law sits when she visits, and where your husband pours his evening scotch and would notice a prescription bottle the way he notices a new throw pillow, which is to say, eventually, and with questions. The bathroom is private in a way the kitchen is not. The bathroom has a door that locks. The bathroom is yours in a way that no other room in this house fully is. This is where the geography of Levittown becomes relevant. Your neighbours are close enough to see your porch light and far enough away to know nothing. The houses are arranged so that you can wave from your driveway and never once have a conversation that goes deeper than the weather and whether the Hendersons are putting in a new fence. The silence between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, after your husband leaves and before the children come home, is a flat, weightless, and oddly carpeted kind of silence. It has a texture. It settles on the countertops like a second layer of dust. You take the first tablet with a glass of water at the kitchen sink, because the instructions say, with food or water, and the kitchen has water. The tablet is small, and the coating is faintly sweet for half a second before the bitterness underneath it arrives. Then, a medicinal smell on your fingers, not unpleasant exactly, but present, chemically present. The kind of smell that stays through 1 hand washing, but not 2. By mid-morning, the edges are softer, not gone. The laundry is still the laundry. The breakfast dishes are still the breakfast dishes, but the quality of their being there has changed slightly. They are manageable. They are tasks, instead of accusations. The medication is doing what the advertisement in the women's magazine said it would do, which was restore you to yourself, a phrase that seemed meaningful in the magazine, and means something slightly different now that you are standing in your kitchen at 11:15 on a Tuesday, doing tasks instead of feeling accused by them. A neighbour, Carol Briggs, 2 doors down, who always knocks rather than ringing, because she says the bell is too loud, stops by that afternoon. She sits at your kitchen table. She drinks the coffee you make automatically. She mentions, while stirring in her second spoon of sugar, that she's been on something similar for about 3 months, prescribed by Dr. Lessing over on Elm, for what she calls that feeling. You both know what feeling. Neither of you names it. Carol stirs her coffee a 3rd time, even though the sugar is already dissolved. The percolator on the back of the stove sounds insulted by the suggestion of a 4th. The bottle rattles when you open the cabinet that evening. Small sound. The aspirin doesn't rattle, it shifts. The Mirachrome doesn't rattle at all. The prescription bottle rattles with a cheerfulness that is slightly out of register with everything else in the cabinet. You press the door closed. You press it again, it clicks both times, which should be enough. And is. You notice it for the first time around 10 in the morning. The metallic taste at the back of your tongue, the one the pharmacist did not mention, and the doctor did not warn you about. It is not unpleasant. It is just present. You drink a glass of water at the kitchen sink, and the taste is still there. You drink another glass of water, and the taste is still there. You stop drinking water because the taste does not respond to water, and the children will be home from school in 4 hours. The mouth has a complaint. The rest of you is fine. More than fine, actually. The kitchen looks manageable in a way it didn't at 7 this morning. The grocery list doesn't feel like a personal attack. And you've already wiped the counters twice, without being asked by anyone, including yourself. This is the amphetamine's pitch, and it's a good one. Smith, Klein & French spent 20 years refining it, starting with a 75-cent nasal inhaler you could buy at the drugstore without talking to anyone, before deciding the product had broader applications. The new tablet is smaller than the inhaler. The pharmacist rings it up faster too. About the taste, it isn't going anywhere. By noon it has settled into something drier, more insistent. The inside of your mouth feels like a room that was cleaned very thoroughly and then sealed. You pour yourself a third glass of water at the kitchen counter. Margaret Tully, from 2 streets over, mentioned something similar last week, standing in her driveway with her car keys, already halfway somewhere. She described it as a little like licking a battery. She said this the way she said everything, which was cheerfully, with her sunglasses on, and without stopping moving. The parched feeling is the amphetamine finishing a sentence it started at breakfast. The sentence is, you can keep going. The parched feeling is the footnote, at a cost. Your doctor spent approximately 6 minutes with you, 4 of which involved asking after your husband's work situation, and remarking that the azaleas out front must be lovely in spring. The prescription was written before you'd finished describing the afternoons. He has a good pen. The detail man who left it also left a notepad with the Smith, Klein & French logo printed at the top, and a pamphlet explaining how Dexamyl supports effective daily functioning in the homebound patient. The homebound patient. That's you, written in someone else's handwriting. By 10:30 the heart is doing something. Not alarming, just noticeable, a small, quick percussion behind the sternum, like someone tapping a desk to get the meeting moving. You press your hand flat against your chest the way you check a roast, briefly, to see if anything's wrong with the temperature. Nothing's wrong. It's just running a little warm. The palpitations will be most noticeable tonight, lying still in bed with the lamp off, when there is nothing else to listen to, and the heart becomes the loudest object in the room. But that's tonight. Right now the laundry is in, the beds are made, and the casserole dish is soaking. You take the trash out to the curb at 11, because Tuesday is pickup. Standing on the driveway in your house slippers in the November light is itself a small adjustment of register. The metallic taste comes outside with you, and the cold does not loosen it. Mr. Sussman across the street is putting his cans out at the same moment, and he raises a hand the way men do when they have nothing to say but want to acknowledge that you have both, simultaneously, taken trash to the same curb. The cans are aluminum, the lids do not stay on. The wind, briefly, has opinions about the lids. This is where the drug earns its reputation. The edges of the afternoon are still sharp, the list is still real, the house is still the house, but there is a layer between you and all of it, thin as wax paper that keeps any single task from landing too hard. The cottony softening that started at breakfast has graduated into something more efficient. The JAMA advertisement called it restored domestic harmony. The advertisement showed a woman in a clean kitchen, smiling at a sponge, which is not an activity that generates smiles on its own. The advertisement ran next to a whiskey ad. Nobody at the Journal flagged this. Margaret Tully is on her 2nd prescription. She mentioned this also, in the driveway, cheerfully, and then drove away. The metallic taste is still with you. It will be there at lunch. It will be there at dinner. It has opinions about the long afternoon, and those opinions are, keep going, stay level, don't stop now. You don't stop. The children will be home in 3 hours and 45 minutes, and you have things to do before they arrive. You feel it again at noon, the dry feeling at the roof of your mouth that no amount of water has fixed since you started, 3 weeks ago, on the small beige tablets. You pour a glass of orange juice instead, and you drink half of it standing at the counter, and the dryness adjusts, but does not leave. You think about ice. You think about lemon drops. You think about whether to mention this at your next appointment, and then you think about how much of the appointment that question would actually consume, and you decide not to. Your appointment is 8 minutes. This is the optimistic estimate. 4 of those minutes are doctor. Paulson asking about the children, the weather, and whether your husband has been travelling for work, which is his way of establishing that you have a full and adequate life before confirming that you are nonetheless struggling to function adequately within it. The remaining 4 minutes are the actual medicine. You have learned to present your complaints in order of severity quickly, like a woman reading a grocery list to someone who has already started walking away. Consider what you do not say in those 4 minutes. You don't mention the dryness. You don't mention the way your heart occasionally does something at 2 in the morning that is best described as editorial, a fast, fluttery, and unmistakably mechanical interruption, like a bird trapped briefly inside your rib cage and then gone. You don't mention that you've been drinking more water than a person reasonably should, and still waking up with your mouth tasting like a copper pipe. These things don't have a clean name, and Dr. Paulson is not writing prescriptions for things without clean names. He's writing them for nervous tension, anxiety state, menopausal melancholy. The diagnosis is already on the pad before you sit down. He fills in the name after. The bottle itself has opinions. It's brown glass, wide-mouthed, with a child-proof cap that is only child-proof if the child hasn't been watching you open it twice a day for 3 weeks. It has a kind of ambient authority in the kitchen drawer, nestled between the rubber bands and the take-out menus from a Chinese restaurant that closed in 1959. You don't put it in the medicine cabinet, because the medicine cabinet is where your husband keeps his aspirin and his barbasol, and the 2 categories of object feel like they belong to different conversations. You stop at Norbert Sloan's Rexall on Elm on Wednesday afternoon for a tin of peppermint lifesavers, because somebody at the salon mentioned that mint cuts the metallic taste a little, briefly, in the way that closing a door cuts the noise from another room. Norbert rings them up without comment. The fluorescent bulb over the register does its slow flickering thing. The Pep-O-Mint Lifesavers cost 12 cents and live on a small wire rack next to the Smith Brothers cough drops and a tin of bromo seltzer that has been there long enough to have earned a kind of seniority. You take the tin, you take a peppermint. The dryness reorganizes itself slightly. It does not leave. The pharmacist on Elm is a Mr. Densky. He wraps each bottle in a small white bag with practiced efficiency and never makes eye contact, and he fills one of these prescriptions every second, all day, across America. Not him specifically. The country, one every second. The clock has been running since 1955, and it has not paused. A woman named Carol from the reception desk at your dentist's office mentions, while you're waiting, that her sister switched to Miltown after having some trouble with the amphetamines. Too fast, her sister said. Too fast inside. Miltown is different, Carol says. Miltown is more like a doorstop. She means this as a recommendation. The cottony blur of it, the way the sharp edges of an afternoon go slightly soft without disappearing entirely, apparently allows the domestic tasks to continue without the heart doing its editorial thing. You make a note to ask Dr. Paulson. You will forget to ask Dr. Paulson. The appointment is 8 minutes. Milton Berle has already claimed the drug is named after him. This is not true. It does not stop anyone from repeating it. In Los Angeles and New York, at cocktail parties where the lamps are warm and someone has put out the good olives, there is a drink called the Miltown Martini. It is a real martini with a Miltown tablet dissolved in it, or simply taken alongside it, depending on who is hosting and how committed they are to the bit. Harris Isbell, at the Lexington Narcotic Farm in Kentucky, has sent a paper to the FDA documenting 3 patients who had grand mal seizures during Miltown withdrawal. The FDA has filed it. The paper is in a drawer somewhere, a very tidy drawer. Presumably, you sit at the kitchen table at 1:30 in the afternoon with the dishes done and the children at school and the radio playing low, and you wait. You are not tired. You are not energetic. You are something the bottle has been promising for 3 months now without quite delivering, a state of being on the cusp of doing the laundry. The clock on the wall ticks once a second, and you can hear it from the dining room, which means the house is the kind of quiet that you used to think only existed in churches and in waiting rooms. Let's talk about Levittown, not the idea of Levittown, the actual physical geometry of it. Your neighbour is close enough that you can see her kitchen window from your kitchen window. You could theoretically hand her a casserole through the glass if both of you opened the sash at the same moment. And yet her name is Carolyn. She has been there for 4 years. And the two of you wave. You have waved approximately 312 times. You have had 3 full conversations, one of which was about her gutters. The ranch house floor plan puts you 30 feet from another human being and somehow makes you feel like the last person on a continent. This is where the afternoon becomes its own kind of diagnosis. Not a diagnosis anyone writes down, although some of them do write it down. Environmental anxiety, domestic adjustment disorder, the housewife's malaise, because there is always a pen and a prescription pad available, and a name on the form makes everyone feel better about the transaction. Your doctor, a man named Dr. Wendell Carr, who played football at Ohio State and has your file memorized, in the way that means he hasn't looked at it since 1953, calls it nervous tension. He says this the way other people say weather, in a flat, even, and faintly clinical register. Informational, seasonal, not alarming. The bottle in the drawer is brown glass with a foil-sealed cap, and it rattles when the drawer opens. You know this rattle the way you know the sound of the school bus. It is a scheduled event. 1 tablet at noon, 1 at 4, with water. The water does not do anything special. It's just the ritual that turns taking a pill into taking your medicine, which are the same action but feel morally different. The tablet itself has a faint medicinal sweetness on your fingers after you've handled it, a chemical residue that lingers through the afternoon, like a second skin. At 2:30 you carry the laundry basket out to the back line. The clothespins are wooden. The wind is doing what it does in November, which is mostly nothing, occasionally a small irritated gust that lifts a pillowcase and sets it back down. Carolyn is at her own line, 2 yards over, hanging diapers in 2 long parallel rows. She raises a hand. You raise a hand. Neither of you crosses the property line. The diapers between you do most of the social work. Mrs. Holloway across the street takes hers with coffee. You know this because she told you, in the same tone she uses to mention she switched laundry detergent. Approximately 32 million American women are having this same conversation at kitchen tables across the country throughout the 1960s, mostly in the same tone, mostly with coffee. The number is not a secret. It's just not a problem. The problem, according to the JAMA advertisement, your doctor has tacked to his waiting room bulletin board next to the polio reminder, is you. Before the tablet. The tablet is the solution. The ad shows a woman surrounded by dishes and noise and children, restored to what the copy calls effective domestic function. Ha ha. The ad runs in the same magazine that carries the Hoover ad on the back cover. The cottony quality sets in around 2 o'clock. Not happiness, exactly. Not calm, exactly. More like someone has taken the sharp edges of the afternoon and wrapped them in something soft, the way you'd pack a glass figurine for moving. The figurine is still there. It's still a figurine, it just doesn't cut when you pick it up. You fold the dish towel. You wipe the counter. You stand at the window and look at Carolyn's kitchen window. And she is not at hers, and this does not bother you in the particular way it usually does. Progress. That's the word Dr. Carr will use at your next appointment. Hell say you sound like you're making progress. The appointment will be 7 minutes. 5 of those will be progress. You lie still in the dark, and you count the beats in your chest, and they do not stay regular. The first one is on time. The second one is early. The third one feels like it's skipped, and then arrives twice. and you press your hand flat against your sternum to find it. Your husband is asleep on his side, and his breathing is even, and the alarm clock on the nightstand reads 1:10. You think about the small beige tablet you took at 7 in the morning, and you think about whether to mention this in March. March is when Dr. Carr has his next opening. His receptionist, a woman named Patricia who writes your name in the appointment book with the particular firmness of someone who has done this 10,000 times, told you February was full. February is always full. You've been seeing Dr. Carr for 2 years, and the visits run about 8 minutes, and 4 of those are pleasantries about the weather and the school year, and whether the Hendersons down the block ever sold. He has a prescription pad with his name printed at the top in navy ink, and he writes on it the way a man signs a cheque, quickly, without looking up. The palpitations are not new. They started around week 3 of the Dexamyl. The Dexamyl is green and heart-shaped, which in retrospect is doing a lot of work as a design choice. It combines dextroamphetamine, which accelerates things, with ambarbiturate, which slows them back down. The theory being that each half cancels the worst of the other out. The theory is optimistic. What actually happens is that your heart gets the stimulant memo and doesn't receive the follow-up. The Dexamyl logic for a moment. 2 drugs combined in a single green tablet, one pushing and one pulling. The stimulant is there so you can manage the day. The barbiturate is there so the stimulant doesn't make you feel like you're being chased. Together, the manufacturer suggests they produce something called controlled energy. Your chest, lying flat in the dark at 1 in the morning, has a different term for it. A racing, skipping sensation in the chest is listed in the clinical literature. It's not listed in the Dexamyl patient materials, which run to about a paragraph and spend most of that paragraph on the phrase as directed by your physician. Your physician, who has his name in navy ink on a pad, spent 6 minutes with you, and 4 of those were about the Hendersons. You count another skip. The clock moves to 1:12. The parched mouth is also not mentioned. Say, it's been there since morning, a dryness that isn't thirst exactly, more like the inside of your mouth has decided to recuse itself from the hydration process entirely. Water doesn't touch it. Coffee doesn't touch it. There's a metallic edge underneath, faint and persistent, the way a coin tastes if you hold it too long. Norbert Sloane, the pharmacist at the Rexall on Elm who puts the child-resistant caps on crookedly, once looked at your prescription and said, without looking up, "Another green heart." He said it the way you'd say 2 sugars. He fills at least a dozen of these a week, probably more. He doesn't say it like it's notable. He says it like inventory. The brown glass bottle is in the kitchen drawer, between a rubber band and a stray birthday candle. You've stopped noticing it sits there at all, which is its own kind of information. In March, you do go in. Patricia writes you down for 2:15 on the 2nd Wednesday, and Dr. Carr sees you for 9 minutes, which is unusually generous of him. You sit on the paper. He asks about the Hendersons. You tell him the Hendersons sold in October. He asks how you've been sleeping. You say fine. He asks if the dose feels right. You say it feels right. He writes a refill on the navy pad and tears it off, and the visit is done. You do not mention the heart. You do not mention the bottle in the kitchen drawer. You take the slip out to the Buick and drive home with the radio off. You press your hand against your sternum again. The beat finds itself briefly, loses itself, finds itself. Your husband breathes evenly. The alarm clock now reads 1:14. The Dexamyl has a street name in Britain, Purple Hearts, which at minimum shows better branding instincts than whoever decided heart-shaped was fine. You think about this, briefly, and then you think about March. You open the medicine cabinet at 11 at night, and you reach past the first bottle to the second one, the one the doctor added 2 weeks after the first, because you mentioned, in passing, that you were not sleeping well. The second bottle is also brown glass, and its label says Seconal, and the capsules inside are red. Take one at bedtime. Take one with water. The capsule is glossy, and the gelatin coating is slightly sticky between your fingers. and you place it on your tongue before you have time to think about it. Seconal belongs to Eli Lilly. On the street, and there is a street for this, even in 1958, even in your zip code, it's called a red devil. The name is not ironic. The capsule dissolves fast. The edges of the room soften before you finish the glass of water, and by the time you set it down on the nightstand, the ceiling has stopped being interesting. You are asleep. You are very asleep. You are asleep in a way that feels less like rest and more like a brief administrative suspension of your personality. Nembutal then, because Seconal isn't the only one. Nembutal is also Eli Lilly. Yellow capsules, which is why people call them yellow jackets. Phenobarbital has been available since 1912, which means your grandmother could have had this problem, and quite possibly did. The barbiturate shelf is well stocked by the time you're standing in front of it. Dr. Carr has options. He uses them. You pick the second bottle up at Norbert's Rexall on a Wednesday at 3, which is when the school children start arriving for cherry phosphates at the soda fountain at the back of the store. Norbert read the slip, nodded once, and disappeared behind the half-glass partition, while a small girl at the fountain laughed at something her brother had said, and the sound moved through the store the way a thrown ball moves through a long room. Norbert returned. Norbert always returns. The bag had 2 staples at the top, which is 1 more staple than the bag required. A woman named Paulette, she lives 3 streets over, in the ranch house with the broken gate that's been broken since April, takes her Seconal with a small glass of scotch because someone told her it helps it work faster. It does help it work faster. This is not a safe piece of information to have. She sets the glass down on the bathroom counter with the slow, careful, and unmistakably medicated precision of someone who has already taken the pill and doesn't want to think about the order of operations too closely. The gate is still broken. Nobody's called about the gate. The thing about barbiturates is that the therapeutic dose and the dangerous dose live closer together than you'd expect neighbours to live. The amount that puts you to sleep is not dramatically different from the amount that doesn't let you wake up. Physicians in 1958 know this. The information is in the literature. A pharmacologist named Harris Isbell at the Lexington Narcotic Farm in Kentucky documented 22 cases of severe Seconal and Miltown withdrawal that same year. 3 of his patients had grand mal seizures and sent the paper to the FDA and to Wallace Laboratories both. The FDA filed it. Wallace filed it. A filing cabinet is a very quiet place for a seizure. By 1960, Seconal and Nembutal account for more barbiturate overdose deaths than any other drugs in that category. Not accidental overdoses. The intake records at Lexington by that point note housewives, 25, 45, suburban, referred by family physician with the frequency and neutrality of a weather report. Barbiturate overdose is the leading method of suicide among American women throughout the entire decade. The prescription pad made this possible. The prescription pad is still on Dr. Carr's desk, navy blue with his name embossed at the top. Marilyn Monroe dies in August 1962. Nembutal and chloral hydrate, prescribed for years by her physician Ralph Greenson. The papers call it acute barbiturate poisoning. Her doctor had been writing her prescriptions since the late 1950s. The appointments were longer than 6 minutes, probably. That much seems true. You put the empty water glass back on the nightstand. The room is soft. You are not thinking about Paulette or Isbell or Greenson or the filed paper or the gate. You are not thinking about anything, which is the point, which is what you told Dr. Carr at the appointment, which is why the second bottle is now on the shelf next to the first one, and why the cabinet door closes on a different cabinet now. You wake at 7 and you cannot get out of bed for several minutes, and the children are already calling from the kitchen for breakfast. The capsule from last night has not finished its work yet, and the tablet from this morning has not started, and you exist in the gap between them, with 1 foot on the bedroom rug and 1 still under the covers. You sit up slowly. You stand. You walk to the medicine cabinet. The bottle with the small beige tablets is on the second shelf, and you take one before you brush your teeth. before you go downstairs. The gap is the thing nobody talks about. Not the sleeping pill and not the morning tablet. And not the small glass of water you drink in the dark bathroom at 6:58 a.m. The gap itself. The 30-minute window between the chemical that holds you down and the one that pulls you upright. You have learned to move slowly during the gap. You have learned not to make important decisions. You have learned not to answer the telephone. Before the kitchen, there is the bathroom mirror. You stand in front of it for 30 seconds in a sleeveless robe, and you do not look at yourself for most of those seconds. Your reflection is doing the things reflections do, being there, being you, being slightly more tired than you remember being yesterday. The bathroom light is the unforgiving kind. The hairbrush on the counter has a tooth missing. You run a comb through your hair without watching, and you walk down the hall to the kitchen the way a person walks to a meeting they have already attended. The morning tablet, small beige and oval, and it came from Dr. Patterson, who saw you for 8 minutes last Tuesday. 4 of those minutes were about your husband's golf game. The prescription says anxiety state, written in blue ballpoint, which is a medical term that means you seemed nervous in the waiting room, which is accurate because the waiting room had a fluorescent bulb that flickered. The bottle cost $3.40 at the pharmacy on Elm. It contains 30 tablets. The math works out to slightly more than 11 cents a day to remain a functional participant in your own life. Downstairs, you make scrambled eggs. The amphetamine is starting now, not a rush, not a wave, just a steady brightening. The way a radio finds a signal. Your hands move efficiently across the stovetop. On. The pan cooperates. You feel the edges of the kitchen go sharp and organized. The cereal box is aligned. The dishes stacked correctly. The morning taking on the quality of a problem you are very much solving. The children eat. You wipe the counter. You feel briefly, genuinely competent. This is the part the doctor meant when he said restored function. He was right about this part. He was less specific about what happens at 2 in the afternoon. By 2, the tablet has done its work and then some. Your jaw aches faintly from being clenched without your noticing. Your mouth is dry in the particular way that no amount of water resolves. Not thirst. Exactly. More like the inside of your cheek has become a weather condition. Your heart ran a small private sprint somewhere around noon. Nobody saw it. You sat down at the kitchen table and waited for it to finish, which it did, eventually, with the unhurried attitude of a thing that will absolutely happen again tomorrow. Margaret from 4 houses down stops by at 2:30. She has a casserole dish she borrowed in September and has remembered, finally, to return. She sets it on the counter and notices you sitting very still at the table and asks if you're all right. You say you're fine, just a little tired. She nods the way people nod when they have their own bottle on their own second shelf, and the conversation would take longer than either of you has. She leaves. The casserole dish sits on the counter, clean and returned and completely useless at this specific moment. Dr. Patterson has refilled this script 4 times. The 4th time, he wrote it without looking up from his desk calendar. Tuesday 2:15, the same slot every 6 weeks, the way some people get their hair cut. He has never mentioned the jaw. You have never mentioned the heart. The form he files says housewife syndrome, ongoing, which he has stamped in blue ink with a small rubber stamp he had made specifically for this purpose. The stamp lives in the second drawer of his desk, between a tin of paper clips and a half roll of cherry lifesavers. It gets a lot of use. The brown glass bottle rattles when you close the cabinet. It has been rattling for 8 months. You have stopped hearing it the way you've stopped hearing the refrigerator hum and the clock in the hallway and your own name said in a tone that means dinner is late. The rattle is just part of the house now. The house has a lot of sounds that used to mean something. You pick up Good Housekeeping at the hairdresser and you turn to page 41 and there is a full-page advertisement for a tablet called Miltown. The drawing shows a woman at a kitchen counter with 3 children, a ringing telephone and a roast in the oven, and her face is tired, and her hand is at her temple. The caption underneath says, "She would like to be the woman her family deserves." You read the small print under the caption. You fold the corner of the page. The hairdresser calls your name, and you put the magazine down without unfolding it. The ad doesn't mention addiction. It mentions effective domestic function. These are presented as the same category of concern. The way a laundry detergent ad presents whiter sheets and a calmer marriage as the same category of concern, except the detergent isn't habit-forming. The ad was designed by someone who understood that the pitch to a woman in 1959 isn't "this will make you feel better." The pitch is "this will make you better at being what you already are." The distinction is subtle. It does a lot of work. The same advertisement, more or less, has been running in the Journal of the American Medical Association since 1956, except that version is aimed at your doctor, not at you. That version shows the same tired woman, the same kitchen, the same caption, but it runs next to an ad for Canadian Club, because JAMA had opinions about what physicians needed to get through their week, and none of those opinions were about consistency. A detail man named Gerald Foss left a copy of the JAMA version on Dr. Patterson's desk in 1957, along with a branded notepad, 4 ballpoint pens, and a small envelope of sample tablets. Gerald did not knock. Gerald knew which offices had open doors. For a moment, Gerald carries a sample case the size of a small suitcase, and he opens it on the corner of the desk with the practiced ease of a man who has done this 11 times already today. He doesn't lecture. He doesn't oversell. He sets down the notepad and the pens and the samples, and he says the word meprobamate with the confidence of a man who has said it 4,000 times. Then he says the brand name, which is easier. Then he leaves. The whole visit takes about as long as your last doctor's appointment. Gerald is unregulated by federal law until 1962. Gerald is having a great decade. Back to the magazine. The ad you folded the corner on cost Wallace Laboratories less than you'd think to place, relative to what it returned. The drug just sits there in its brown glass bottle with its cork stopper, patient, quiet and faintly chemical, in the kitchen drawer, waiting. You think about the woman in the drawing, her hand at her temple, the roast, the telephone, 3 children arranged around her, like a still life of ambient demand. The ad doesn't say she's unhappy. Unhappy would be an editorial position. The ad says she's experiencing nervous tension, which is a diagnosis and a caption and a market segment all compressed into 2 words. Nervous tension. It's not a medical term. It's a description of everything you felt last Tuesday and every Tuesday before that, and it's been written on your chart in pen. The woman in the drawing is restored by the end of the ad. You can tell because she's smiling in the second panel. Her hand is no longer at her temple. The roast is presumably still in the oven. The telephone is presumably still ringing. The children have not changed. Everything is identical, except that she's fine now. The ad is not subtle about what it's selling. It's selling the second panel. You arrive at Mrs. Halloran's house at 4 on Tuesday for bridge, and there is a small frosted glass on the coffee table that nobody named the last time you came. Today Mrs. Halloran names it. She calls it a Miltown martini, and she winks when she says it, and the other women at the table do the small polite laugh they do when something is supposed to be funny. You take a glass when she offers you one. You hold it in your right hand and you do not drink from it for a long time. The cards are dealt anyway. The drink is not complicated. 2 parts gin, 1 part vermouth. The Miltown goes in dissolved, which takes a minute and a half in warm water before you add it to the shaker. And Mrs. Halloran has clearly timed this. She's practiced. The tablet leaves a faint chalky residue at the bottom of the glass that shifts when you tilt it, like sediment in a snow globe. Nobody mentions the sediment. This is also Bridge Club. Let's talk about the name. Milton Berle had already told the joke on television, that Miltown was named after him, not the other way round, and the audience laughed, and the next morning a pharmacist on 6th Avenue sold 47 prescriptions before noon. By 1956, the Miltown Martini is circulating through cocktail parties in Los Angeles and New York the way a really good rumor circulates. Fast, glossy, and socially lubricating, completely untraceable to anyone who started it. Mrs. Halloran heard about it from her sister-in-law in Pasadena. Her sister-in-law heard about it from a woman at her church. That woman read it in a column. The column didn't name a source. None of them do. Dorothy Finch, who sits to your left and always forgets to shuffle properly, sets her glass down without finishing it. She's been on Miltown for 4 months, she mentions, and she doesn't love mixing it with alcohol. Her doctor told her it was fine. Dorothy has a way of saying my doctor told her it was fine about almost everything. The pills for her knee, the pills for her sleep, the pills for what he called her anxious temperament. Her doctor spent 8 minutes with her in November. 3 of those were about his parking situation on Elm. She got a prescription and a sample packet and directions to the pharmacy on her way out, and she was in her car before she'd finished putting her coat back on. This is where it gets quiet in the room. Not the bridge game, which continues, but something under it. 4 women at a table on a Tuesday afternoon. 3 of them are on something. 1 isn't, which is you, and you are aware that you are aware of this, which is its own kind of exhaustion. The cottony blurriness is described differently by each of them. Mrs. Halloran says it makes the edges softer. Dorothy says it takes the weight off without taking anything else off. The 3rd woman, June, just says she sleeps now. She says it like sleeping is a recent innovation that's still in beta. The Miltown Martini has a social function the label doesn't mention. It makes the thing you're doing, taking a sedative on a Tuesday at 4, into something wry, something chosen, something you named yourself and made a joke about first, which means nobody else can make the joke, which means it doesn't land on you. This is a kind of armor. It is not a particularly strong kind. But you are in a ranch house in 1957, and the options are limited, and the cards are still being played, and June is sleeping now, and the glass is in your hand, and eventually you drink from it. The sediment shifts at the bottom. Not bad. Not good. Just present. The way most things in this room are present. You watch Milton Berle on Tuesday night with your husband, and Milton Berle holds up a small bottle and pretends to read the label on the side, and he tells the studio audience that the drug was named after him personally. The audience laughs for what feels like a long time. Your husband laughs too. You laugh after a small delay because that is what is happening in the room. Milton Berle puts the bottle in his jacket pocket and goes on with the next joke, and the bottle stays in the jacket pocket for the rest of the segment. The thing is, by 1957, the joke isn't really a joke anymore. It's a fact, delivered in joke shape. American pharmacists are filling roughly 1 Miltown prescription every second, not 1 per minute, 1 per hour, 1 per busy afternoon shift. 1 per second. All day. Every day. The number sits there politely and does not require commentary. Consider what you are actually paying for then. The tablet itself costs about as much as a small button. You're paying for something else. You're paying, apparently, for the name. You're paying for the fact that Milton Berle patted his jacket pocket on Tuesday night and the studio audience recognized the reference. Your husband finds this culturally coherent. A celebrity endorses something by making a joke about it, and the thing becomes more real. He does not find this strange because it isn't strange. This is how things work in 1957. The remarkable part is what's inside the jacket pocket, a sedative taken daily by roughly 1 in 3 American adults who walked into a general practitioner's office with what their chart will describe as nervous tension. Not by a psychiatrist, by a general practitioner who completed approximately 2 weeks of pharmacology in medical school. 2 weeks. Less than most people spend learning to parallel park. A detail man named Gerald Pruitt has been in your doctor's office twice this month. Gerald wears a good tie and carries a sample case with a snap-closed latch that he pops open on the corner of the desk with the calm, polished and faintly theatrical confidence of a man showing you something you were already going to want. He leaves behind branded notepads, a pen that writes in blue, and small foil packets arranged in a cardboard sleeve. He does not need federal approval to be in this office. He does not need federal approval to hand your doctor anything. The 1962 Kefauver-Harris amendments haven't happened yet, and Gerald is in no hurry. Your doctor sees you for 6 minutes. 4 of those involve asking how your husband is doing, whether the children are sleeping through the night, whether you've been keeping up with things. The answer you give is approximate. The prescription he writes says anxiety state, which is a real thing written by a real pen on a real prescription pad that you will take to a pharmacist who will fill it in under 40 seconds because he has filled 17 of these today and the day is not finished. You will, is you a ca, is twint. Hiquite hive. The bottle is brown glass. You put it in the kitchen drawer next to the batteries and the extra birthday candles, and it sits there with the low-key permanence of something that has always been there, which it has not, but which the drawer now insists upon. Milton Berle goes to commercial. Your husband gets up for another beer. The studio audience applause fades, and the screen fills with a woman in a clean kitchen holding a product that will make the kitchen cleaner. You stay on the couch for a moment longer than necessary. The bottle taps once against the inside of the drawer, faintly, from the kitchen. You didn't move it. Your husband tells you over the meatloaf on Thursday that a salesman came to his office building this afternoon, not to his floor, but to the 3rd floor where his brother-in-law works. The salesman left a leather case on the receptionist's desk, and a plastic pen, and a pad of paper with a drug company's name on it. Your brother-in-law's wife had a sample tablet in her purse by the time your husband called him at 5. Your husband shakes his head a little while he tells the story. The meatloaf is fine. Nobody at the table mentions the bottle in the medicine cabinet. The salesman has a name. His industry calls him a detail man, which sounds like someone who organizes files, and not someone who drops free amphetamines on a receptionist's desk between the hours of 9 and 4-5 days a week, with a branded pen as a chaser. He has a territory. He has a quota. He has a sample case with a molded foam interior, each slot holding a small packet the approximate size and weight of a matchbook. The packets are clean. The seams are heat-sealed. The label has a reassuring colour and a calming font, and nothing in the presentation suggests you are looking at a barbiturate. There is no federal law governing what he can say to a doctor. There isn't one yet. He can sit across from your family physician, the same man who spent 6 minutes with you last Tuesday and wrote nervous tension on a prescription pad, and make any clinical claim he finds useful that afternoon. He can leave a sample case, a notepad, a pen with the drug company's name embossed in gold, and a stack of journal reprints that support exactly the conclusions the company would prefer your doctor to reach. This is not a grey zone. There is no zone. It's an open field. About the reprints. They are photocopied from actual journals, sometimes the Journal of the American Medical Association, sometimes something called Clinical Medicine or Therapeutic Notes, which sounds authoritative and is in fact published by the drug company itself. Your doctor gets a version of a study. He gets the version the detail man brought. The version that didn't make it into the sample case also exists somewhere. It's in a filing cabinet in New Jersey. It is not travelling. A detail man named Warren Hollis covers 12 counties in Ohio. He keeps a small green logbook in his breast pocket where he tracks which physicians he's visited and how recently, the way a gardener notes, which beds need water. He checks the logbook before he gets out of the car. He smooths his tie in the rear-view mirror. He's called your doctor by his first name since 1953. He brings Miltown samples, Dexamyl samples, and occasionally a branded golf umbrella when the quarter numbers are good. The doctor has 4 umbrellas now. 3 of them are in the closet near his waiting room. 1 is in his car. By 1960, there are roughly 3,000 detail men working American physician offices. No inspection required. No transcript of the visit. No record at the FDA of what was said or left behind. Because the 1938 Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act regulates what goes on the label, not what Warren Hollis says while standing in a hallway with a foam-lined case. The 1962 Kefauver-Harris amendments will eventually change some of this. Eventually is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Meanwhile, your husband finishes the meatloaf and brings his plate to the sink. He isn't suspicious of the detail man. He's impressed, slightly, the way men are impressed by other men who have territories and quotas and leather cases. The sample tablet is across town in your sister-in-law's purse. It's green. It's heart-shaped, because of course it is. By next week she'll have asked her doctor about it, and her doctor will have a logbook entry from Warren Hollis, dated 2 days prior, and the prescription will take about 4 minutes. Your husband rinses his plate. The bottle in your medicine cabinet stays quiet when the cabinet closes gently. You've learned to close it gently. You sit across from your physician for your 6-month visit, and you notice that the corner of his desk now holds a small wooden case that was not there in February. The case is open. Inside the case are 3 rows of small foil packets, each printed with a different brand name, each containing 2 tablets. He notices you, noticing them, and he reaches into the case without looking, and he pushes 1 packet across the desk toward you with the back of his pen. He says you can try it for a week. He says it is on the company. The appointment is 10 minutes. 4 of those minutes are small talk about the weather and whether the new Kroger on Route 9 is better than the old one. The remaining 6 minutes contain your blood pressure reading, a question about sleep, a question about your energy, and the part where you mention the fatigue and the difficulty concentrating and the low-grade headache that has been present since approximately March. He writes something on a small pad. He does not show you what he writes. The pad has a logo on it you don't recognize, printed in a shade of blue that is very confident about itself. The packet then, it's foil. It crinkles. The brand name is printed in a font that suggests authority without actually having any. Inside are 2 small, glossy and unsettlingly cheerful tablets, green heart-shaped, because of course they are heart-shaped, which contain dextroamphetamine on the one hand and amobarbitol on the other. Each ingredient there to manage the side effects of the ingredient beside it. The stimulant keeps you moving. The sedative keeps you from noticing that you are moving too fast. The combination is called Dexamyl, and the logic is that 2 problems introduced simultaneously will politely cancel each other out. They don't. Quite. But the tablets are very pretty. Your physician did not learn about this drug in medical school. Medical school gave him approximately 2 weeks of pharmacology instruction, which covered aspirin and penicillin, and the general principle that the dose makes the poison, which is true but leaves some gaps. He learned about Dexamyl from Warren, or someone like Warren, who left the sample case on a Tuesday and followed up with a phone call on Thursday and dropped off a reprint of a clinical summary that Warren's company had paid for, and Warren's company had also selected. The reprint did not include the part about dependency. The reprint was not long. Dr. Ellsworth, which is what his nameplate says. Dr. G. Ellsworth, the G standing for Gerald, a fact his patients do not know because his patients do not ask, writes the prescription with the branded pen. The prescription says nervous tension, not a diagnosis, not a code, just 2 words in Harold's handwriting, slightly hurried, because there is another patient in the waiting room and the 10 minutes ran over when you mentioned the headache. He tears the sheet from the pad with the confident blue logo and slides it across to you the same way he slid the foil packet, with the back of his pen. You take it, you fold it, you put it in your purse next to your grocery list, where it sits between milk and dish soap and a reminder to call your mother. The wooden sample case stays on the desk. It will still be there in August. By August it will have been restocked twice, and a second case, slightly smaller, dark brown instead of tan, containing a different brand, will have appeared beside it. The cases don't announce themselves. They accumulate the way certain things do in a room that nobody is officially watching. A nurse named Phyllis walks past the open office door, glances at the cases, and does not slow down. She has walked past them 11 times this week. The cases have stopped registering. The foil packet goes home in your purse. The purse goes on the hook by the door. The hook by the door is where things land that will be dealt with later. Later comes after dinner, which comes after the children, which comes after the dishes. You find the packet when you are looking for your reading glasses. You set it on the counter next to the brown glass bottle that has been there since April. You look at both of them for a moment. The kitchen is quiet. It is a Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon, and the kitchen is very quiet, and both things are just sitting there on the counter, waiting. You take your morning tablet at 7, and at 11 the kitchen still feels the way it felt at 6, and you stand in front of the medicine cabinet for 2 full minutes before you open it. You tap a second tablet out of the bottle, and you swallow it without water. The cap goes back on. The cabinet door clicks shut. The afternoon proceeds normally, the children are picked up on time, dinner is on the table at 6, and nothing happens that anyone in the house could point to. You think about whether to do it again tomorrow. You do it again tomorrow. The second tablet is the part the bottle doesn't warn you about. The instructions say 1. The instructions were written by someone who has not stood in a kitchen at 11 on a Tuesday with the dryer running and a casserole that needs to be assembled and a child who wants to know where their other shoe is. And the answer is that it is behind the dryer and the dryer is running and you already know that. And none of this was in the brochure. The bottle says 1. The bottle has opinions about your schedule. The bottle has never met your schedule. Consider what 2 does that 1 doesn't. The amphetamine half of Dexamyl, the dextroamphetamine, has a sharpening effect that the ammobarbital is supposed to smooth into something manageable. 1 tablet produces a sharp, pressurized and faintly humming clarity, the sense that the list will get done and the house will stay level. 2 tablets produce the same thing, slightly louder, with a faint metallic taste at the back of your throat that no amount of water quite addresses, and a heart that occasionally announces itself at night when you're lying still and the house is quiet and everyone else is asleep. You lie there and feel your pulse in your ears. The ceiling does not acknowledge this. Barbara Kettner, a woman on your street who started hers in March, tells you at the school pickup line that she went up to 2 in February. She says it with her eyes on the chain-link fence and her hands in her coat pockets. You say you haven't needed to. She nods in the way people nod when they're not processing what you just said. This is where the dependency math begins, though nobody uses the word dependency. The body adjusts to the first tablet. The first tablet stops doing what the first tablet used to do. The second tablet does what the first tablet used to do. This is a physiology fact, not a moral failure. But the distinction is not available to you in 1961, because Harris Isbell sent a paper documenting exactly this process. Grand mal seizures during Dexamyl withdrawal, 22 documented cases, to the FDA and to Wallace Laboratories in 1958, and both of them filed it, which is one way to handle a paper, and also the worst way. The paper exists. It is in a drawer somewhere. The drawer is not near you. Of course the dose goes up, because the dose always goes up. The body adjusts. Dr. G. Ellsworth's sample packet said to take 1 in the morning. The packet did not say what to do when 1 in the morning stops being enough morning. The second tablet on your tongue is smaller than you remembered. The kitchen is brighter than it was at 7, and your hand on the counter has a faint fine tremor that the counter does not acknowledge. The metallic taste is present by noon, not sharp, not unbearable, just there, like a small administrative reminder that you have a pharmacology now, and the pharmacology has opinions about your afternoons. Your mouth is dry in the way that makes water feel like a courtesy rather than a solution. You drink another glass anyway. You add it to the list of things you're managing. The list is long. The list has always been long. The list is part of why you're here. You shake the bottle on the morning of the 20th, and the sound it makes is wrong. You shake it again over the kitchen counter, and 1 tablet falls out, and that is all the tablets that are left. The prescription was supposed to last 30 days. You look at the label, and the date is typed on it, and the date is the 3rd. You count on your fingers. You count again. You sit down at the kitchen table with the bottle in your hand and you do not stand up for a while, and the kettle begins to whistle and goes on whistling 10 days early. The math is not complicated. The math is just something you've been quietly not doing for several weeks now, taking 2 when the instructions said 1, and now the instructions and the reality are separated by 10 days and 1 empty brown glass bottle in your hand. The bottle doesn't comment. It feels half a tablet lighter than it was on Monday. What 10 days early means? Practically, you can call the doctor's office. The receptionist who answers is named Doris, or someone who sounds exactly like Doris, and Doris will tell you the doctor can see you Thursday, and Thursday is 5 days away, and you will say thank you in your regular voice, because you are not the kind of person who makes scenes at Doris. You could go to a different doctor. There's a practice on Elm that your neighbour Dorothy mentioned once, in the context of something else, in passing. You filed it. Women in 1960 have filed a great deal of information in passing. You don't call it doctor shopping because nobody has named it that yet, but you understand the logic the same way you understand the logic of a second grocery store when the first one is out of something you need. A man named Gerald Pfeiffer works out of a beige, tidy, and faintly understaffed office on Route 9 with examining table paper that crinkles loudly every time you shift your weight. Gerald Pfeiffer has been practicing general medicine since 1948 and completed approximately 2 weeks of pharmacology instruction across his entire medical education, which puts him in the majority. He has 17 patients before you and 4 after, and he gives you 8 minutes and a prescription for a month's supply of Miltown, written in pen, with the diagnosis typed as nervous tension, because that is what the form says when a woman sits across from him and does not look entirely fine. He does not ask what you are already taking. The form has no second page. The Miltown sits in a different drawer from the Dexamyl, which is not a system so much as a coincidence that became a system. The Miltown is for evening. The Dexamyl is for morning. Together they produce something that is almost a person, or at least a person-shaped arrangement of tasks completed and children fed and surfaces wiped down until they shine. Apart, neither one is doing quite what it used to do. You have noticed this the way you notice a crack in the ceiling, gradually, then all at once, and then you are just living with it. By 1960, Lexington is logging housewives the way a hotel logs guests. Suburban, 25 to 45. Referred by family physician. The intake clerk who types those notes is not commenting on anything. He is just filling in the fields. The fields have always looked like this. Meanwhile, your prescription is in your purse, and your purse is on the counter, and the kettle has finally stopped whistling because the water boiled away. There's a faint medicinal sweet smell on your fingers from handling the tablet, a chemical residue that soap doesn't entirely resolve. You make a second cup of tea. You open the new bottle. The sound it makes is correct. You note, without deciding anything, that you'll be more careful this time. You dial the doctor's office at 8:30, and the receptionist picks up on the second ring and uses your name without asking what it is. You tell her you need a refill on the morning tablets. She does not ask why. She does not ask how you are sleeping. She tells you she will leave the script in an envelope at the front desk, and that the envelope will be there by lunch. You thank her twice. You hang up. You feel the relief land in your chest like a missed step at the bottom of the stairs, and you sit down at the kitchen table again. The envelope system is not in any medical manual. It exists because it works for everyone. The office doesn't have to see you. You don't have to sit on the paper-covered table and explain yourself while the paper crinkles every time you shift your weight. The envelope waits. You pick it up. The transaction is complete in the time it takes to walk from the parking lot to the front door and back. What's in the envelope then? A small square of paper? Your name? The date? The drug? The quantity? 30 tablets. Refills as needed. Signed in blue ballpoint by a man who last saw you in March. The diagnosis line reads, nervous tension. It has always read nervous tension. The pad it was written on came from the detail man's sample case, which also contained a pen and a branded paperweight and 6 sample packets of something new from Smith, Klein and French. The paperweight says Dexamyl in gold letters. It sits on the physician's desk like a small, well-funded trophy. A woman named Carol Streetman picks up her envelope on the same Tuesday you pick up yours. She's been coming to this office since 1958. The receptionist has never once asked her to schedule an appointment for a refill. Carol nods, tucks the envelope into her purse next to her grocery list, and walks out through the glass door into the parking lot with the steady quiet and unhurried efficiency of a woman who has done this 30 times before. She has a pot roast to start by 3. The envelope is already forgotten. Here, the math gets interesting. Your prescription costs you $4.20 at the pharmacy, which includes the pharmacist's dispensing fee, the brown glass bottle with the foil-sealed cap, and a small paper bag. Wallace Laboratories produced those 30 tablets for approximately 9 cents. The remaining $4.11 covers the advertising, the detail man's salary, the branded paperweight, and the quarterly earnings report that went to shareholders in a cream envelope with a return address in New Jersey. The detail man drives a company Buick. It's a nice Buick. By 1957, American pharmacists are filling roughly 1 Miltown prescription every second, all day, every day, which puts the brown glass bottle somewhere between a national symbol and a household appliance. Cocktail parties in Los Angeles feature a drink called the Miltown Martini. 1 part gin, 1 part tonic, taken with a tablet from the host's medicine cabinet. Milton Berle jokes on television that the drug was named after him. He is wrong. The drug was named after Miltown, New Jersey, which is a very small town that did not ask for this. You don't think about any of that. You think about the grocery list and the fact that Carol Streetman's station wagon is blocking the turn lane and that the pot roast needs 4 hours. You stop at the pharmacy on the way home because you pass it anyway. The pharmacist's name is Dave. Dave does not make eye contact. He slides the bag across the counter, reads the total, takes the $5 bill, gives you back 80 cents in change. The transaction takes 45 seconds. You are home before noon. The bottle goes into the left drawer. The brown glass catches the light. The drawer closes, which is the most communication anyone in this house will initiate before 2 in the afternoon. You put the kettle on. You cross-call doctor off the grocery list, which is where you had written it because it was the only paper on the counter. The morning is already organized again. The envelope, the parking lot, the bottle in the drawer, all of it routine, weightless, unremarkable. The system works. That's the thing about the system. It works. You drive across town the following Tuesday and you sign in at a different doctor's office on Maple Street, the one your friend Doris recommended, the one where they do not ask many questions and the receptionist does not look up from her crossword. The waiting room has 6 chairs and 3 other women sitting in them, and none of you make eye contact. The doctor sees you for 4 minutes. He writes a script for the same morning tablet under a different brand name. You pay in cash. You do not give your real telephone number, and he does not ask for it twice. The practice has a name, though nobody in 1958 is calling it anything. You are simply being resourceful. One physician has stopped refilling. One has gone on vacation. One's receptionist has started leaving long pauses before she says she'll check the chart, and the pause has a quality to it. So you find another doctor, and then, if needed, another after that. The women in that waiting room are doing the same arithmetic. You can tell by the cash. The prescription itself, it says nervous tension, written in ballpoint, in handwriting that slopes hard to the right, as though the pen was already moving toward the next patient. Nervous tension is not a diagnosis with dimensions. It doesn't specify duration, origin, or mechanism. It is a holding category, the medical equivalent of miscellaneous, and it fits on one line of the pad without crowding the dosage instructions. Your doctor spent 2 of your 4 minutes writing it. The other 2 were about your sleep. The tablet itself is different this time. Same family, different colour. The other one was white. This one is a pale green, heart-shaped, because of course it is heart-shaped, and it combines the stimulant with a mild sedative on the theory that each will smooth the edges of the other. Dexamyl, the stimulant says go. The sedative says, but not too fast. Together they say, function pleasantly. The logic is confident. The logic also has not considered what happens when you stop taking them, but that is next week's problem. This week, you have a casserole to make and a school pickup at 3. A woman named Patricia Gruber is sitting 2 chairs down from you when you return the following month. She's wearing a good, neat and carefully buttoned coat. She's holding a purse with both hands in the way that signals she has rehearsed being somewhere she doesn't want to be. She signs in, sits down, does not look at the magazine on the table next to her. The receptionist returns to her crossword. The clock above the door ticks with the weight of a formal occasion. The era has a word for what you're doing, and the word will eventually be doctor shopping, which sounds like a thing you do enthusiastically on a Saturday rather than a thing you do out of desperation on a Tuesday with cash in your coat pocket. By 1960, it is common enough that the intake records at the Lexington Narcotic Farm in Kentucky have developed a shorthand for it. Housewife 2545 suburban, referred by family physician. The family physician who referred her was not, in most of these cases, aware that he had. Here is the geography of it. Maple Street is 11 minutes from your house. The office on Clarendon is 9. There's a third one your neighbour mentioned, out by the highway, that doesn't require an appointment at all. You just walk in before 11. The distances are manageable because you have a car and a Wednesday free and a bottle that is running low. Not everyone has all 3. The women who have all 3 find a way to maintain the supply. The ones who don't find other solutions, or don't, and the intake records at Lexington do not distinguish between the 2 outcomes. You fill the prescription at a pharmacy 2 towns over. The pharmacist puts the tablets in a brown glass bottle. The bottle settles into your purse and rides quietly all the way home. You put it in the left drawer, next to the other one, because the left drawer is where things go that the kitchen has quietly agreed to keep. You hold the new bottle up to the kitchen window, and you see that the tablets inside are not round. They are heart-shaped, and they are pale green, and the doctor on Maple Street called them Dexamyl when he wrote the script. The label says 1 in the morning and 1 at noon. The shape is hard to pour, and the tablets stick to each other in the bottle, and you have to shake it twice to get one out. You place it on your tongue. It tastes the same as the round ones did, only slightly sweeter on the way down. Let's talk about what Dexamyl actually is. 1 part dextroamphetamine, which accelerates things. 1 part amobarbital, which slows things down. The thinking, as far as anyone explained it, was that each would cancel the other's worst effects and leave you in the middle, functional, calm, not too much of either. The tablet is, in its architecture, a pharmaceutical argument with itself. You are expected to benefit from the disagreement. The amphetamine hits first. The kitchen gets sharper. The dishes announce themselves. You move with a brisk, purposeful and faintly chemical efficiency that feels earned even though you haven't slept particularly well, and the morning gets organised in a way that it didn't before the prescription. The beds are made. The counter is wiped. You are, technically, functioning. This is what the doctor meant by effective domestic function. He used that phrase. He wrote it in the chart. By early afternoon, the sedative begins to catch up. Not sleep, nothing as generous as sleep, more like a screen door closing between you and the feeling you are about to have. The acceleration doesn't stop so much as it gets muffled. It is the feeling of walking from the kitchen into the hallway and pausing on the runner, because you can no longer remember what you came down the hallway to do. The thought was right there. Then the door closed on it, gently, and the door does not open back up. In Britain, they call Dexamyl purple hearts, which tells you something about what happens when you cross a brand across an ocean. The tablet is green, and it is shaped like a heart, and it arrives in England and gets called purple. Nobody documents the colour discrepancy. The name sticks anyway. This is how pharmaceutical mythology works, loosely and at volume. Meanwhile, your body is keeping a different ledger. The amphetamine raises your heart rate, not dramatically enough to call anyone, just enough that, lying in bed at 11 o'clock with the house finally quiet, you can feel your pulse in places you don't usually notice, at the throat, in the temple, faintly at the wrist, a skipping, unsettled rhythm, not alarming, just present, like a guest who arrived before you were ready and hasn't quite left. If you miss a dose, or the bottle runs out on a Thursday and the refill takes until Monday, the sedative side has opinions about that. Headache first. Then a low-grade tremor in the hands that makes pouring coffee into a cup an exercise in concentration. The prescription was written as a daily thing. Your nervous system has accepted the terms. It is, at this point, a contract. Mrs. Alderman, who lives 2 doors down and whose husband works in insurance, holds her bottle up to her own kitchen window on a Tuesday morning, the same way you held up yours. She squints at the label, shakes it once. She told you this herself, standing at the chain-link fence between your yards, with the same flatness she uses to discuss the weather. The bottle made a dry, dismissive sound. She poured. She went inside. You went inside. Both kitchens got cleaned. You take the bottle out of the medicine cabinet on Saturday morning, and you walk it to the bedroom, and you place it inside the toe of your good Sunday shoe at the back of the closet. Your husband is downstairs reading the paper. He does not check the medicine cabinet often, but he checks it sometimes, and last week he asked you about the second bottle, and you do not want to be asked about the third one. A shoe goes back on its rack. You close the closet door. You go downstairs, and you ask him if he wants more coffee. The third bottle is not technically different from the second bottle. Same brown glass, same cork, same weight in the hand. It just exists in a different location, which is the part that matters. You have become, without meaning to, a competent archivist of your own prescription history. One bottle in the medicine cabinet where it belongs, one in the nightstand where it's convenient, one in the Sunday shoe where it's invisible. The system has no name. You didn't design it. It assembled itself one bottle at a time, and the bottles are exactly where you have placed them. Medicine cabinet, nightstand, Sunday shoe. Let's talk about the doctors. There are 2 of them now. Dr. Harmon sees you on Tuesdays at his office on Birch Street and writes anxiety state on the form in blue ballpoint. Dr. Ellison sees you on the 3rd Thursday in a town 4 exits down the parkway and writes nervous tension on the form in green. Neither of them knows about the other. The receptionists do not call each other. The pharmacies do not call each other. You drive between the 2 offices in the same Buick, wearing a different blouse, and the Buick does not say anything either. Both doctors spend about 6 minutes with you, and 4 of those minutes are small talk about the weather and your oldest, who is doing fine. What it actually looks like on a Thursday is a 40-minute drive each way, a waiting room with magazines from 3 months ago, and the antiseptic smell that clings to your coat collar all the way home. The drive is the part the prescription pad never accounts for. You stop for gas in Glenview, because filling up in your own town would mean explaining to the attendant why you're heading north on a Thursday. The attendant in Glenview does not ask. He cleans your windshield in long, even strokes and tells you to have a nice day. A woman named Carol Fitch, who lives 2 streets over and whose husband works in insurance, manages 4 physicians. Carol keeps a small spiral notebook in her purse, not for phone numbers. She tips the notebook slightly when she sits next to you at the PTA meeting, and you can see that each page has a column for name, address, and what she told them. You do not ask to borrow it. You don't need to ask. You understand the notebook completely on first sight, the way you understand a recipe you've never made. The bottles accumulate because the refills are easy, and because stopping is not. That's the part the prescription pad doesn't mention. Harris Isbell, a researcher down in Kentucky, wrote up 22 cases in 1958. Patients who stopped meprobamate and had seizures, grand mal, the serious kind, and sent the paper to the FDA and to Wallace Laboratories. The FDA filed it. Wallace Laboratories filed it. The bottle in your Sunday shoe has no awareness of this paper, but the bottle in your Sunday shoe is in a way the paper's most direct consequence. You go back downstairs. Your husband is still reading. The coffee is ready. The kitchen is bright and clean, and the counter is clear, which is one of the things you're good at, the counter being clear. He looks up and smiles and says thank you, and you smile back, and the shoe is in the closet, and the closet door is closed, and the door to the kitchen is open, and everything is in the right place. It is a very well-organized house. You walk into a small office above the dry cleaner on Saturday morning at the address Doris gave you, and the receptionist takes your $5 and writes your name on an index card. The doctor sees you for 2 minutes. He weighs you on a scale that is not quite level, asks one question about your appetite, and writes a prescription for amphetamine sulfate without ever saying the word aloud. You leave with a paper bag containing 40 tablets. The receptionist tells you to come back in 2 weeks. You will come back in 10 days, and she will not say anything about it. The office has no examining table. There is a chair, a scale, a desk, and a small, dusty, and faintly yellowed framed certificate from 1939 that you don't look at too closely. The doctor has a yellow legal pad on his desk, and he fills in a form while you are still standing. He does not offer you a seat. He doesn't need to. 2 minutes is not long enough to make sitting worth the effort. The prescription is already written before he asks how long you've been feeling this way. It is an assembly line. You are the product and the customer simultaneously, which is an unusual position to be in at 9:15 on a Saturday morning. The tablet itself, small and white, and has a slightly chalky texture that your thumbnail catches on. The taste, when it dissolves wrong, is metallic, thin and acidic, and present in the back of your throat for the rest of the morning regardless of how much water you drink. Your mouth dries out by noon. Your mouth is dry by 11. The glass of water on the kitchen counter becomes a recurring object in your day, something you keep returning to the way you might keep checking a door you already know is locked. By 1 in the afternoon you have done the following: mopped the kitchen floor, written 3 letters, re-ironed a shirt your husband already ironed, and reorganized the spice shelf alphabetically. Then by category. You are not tired. You are also not exactly awake in any way that feels comfortable. You are somewhere slightly above the normal frequency of yourself, like a radio station almost tuned in. A slight buzz. A faint edge. Not unpleasant. Not nothing. Margaret Unser, who runs the Tuesday morning bridge group 2 streets over, pats your hand at one of these sessions and says you seem so much more yourself lately. She means it as a compliment. You say thank you. You have reorganized her card pile twice during the hand, without noticing you were doing it. She doesn't mention that part. The diet clinics are operating in every mid-sized American city by the late 1950s, above dry cleaners, beside insurance offices, in the back of buildings that used to be something else. Some of them have nurses. Some of them have a scale and a doctor who visits on Thursdays. The prescription is not for anxiety, not written by your family physician, not on file anywhere that connects to your other prescriptions. It is for weight, or the idea of weight, which is a diagnosis nobody is required to define. Herman Toller publishes a book in 1961 called Calories Don't Count. It sells 2 million copies. The book's main dietary supplement is a capsule of safflower oil. The amphetamine is not mentioned in the book. The amphetamine is the part you arrange separately. The 40 tablets last 12 days, not 14. This is a math problem you work out quietly and do not discuss with anyone. You come back on day 10, which is a Wednesday, and pay the $5, and the receptionist writes your name on a new index card as though the old one has been lost, which it has not been lost. It is in a drawer behind her. You can see the edge of it. Nobody mentions the old card. The scale is still not quite level. The doctor still has the yellow legal pad. The paper bag goes in your purse. The purse goes in the kitchen drawer, under the dish towels. The brown glass bottle is there every time you open the drawer to get a dish towel, which is several times a day. You have stopped noticing. You stand at the back fence on Wednesday afternoon, and Mrs. Carlton from next door asks you in a lowered voice if you have a spare. She does not say a spare what, and she does not need to. You understand what she means because you would have understood the question if you had been the one asking it last Tuesday at the same fence. You go inside, you come back out. You hand her 2 tablets in a folded piece of waxed paper, and she puts the paper inside the pocket of her apron, and you both go on talking about the lawn. This is not unusual. Not in 1961. Not on this block. There's a whole informal economy running along the back fences and over the telephone wires and through the school pickup line, and nobody has given it a name, because naming it would require acknowledging what it is. Mrs. Carlton's doctor is Dr. Fen on Maple, and he writes her Miltown for what he calls menopausal melancholy, which is a diagnosis he produced in approximately 4 minutes. She has 6 of those minutes left, but he used 2 of them asking about her husband's golf game. You have Dexamyl from the clinic above the dry cleaner on Route 9, which technically means you have 2 different drugs from 2 different dispensing sources, and the gap between those 2 facts and any kind of federal regulation is, in 1961, quite wide. Consider what you each actually have. You have green heart-shaped tablets, heart-shaped because of course they are, that combine dextramphetamine with amobarbital, a sedative, because the logic is that one ingredient cancels the other, and what remains is something called functional calm. Mrs. Carlton has small white tablets her pharmacist counts out from a bulk amber jug into a smaller bottle every 30 days, the way a butcher weighs out the same cut of stew meat for the same family on the same day of the week. Neither of you talks about price. The bottles just sit in the drawers. That's what bottles do. Your neighbour, Dot Shriver, 2 doors east, has a different arrangement. Dot sees Dr. Fen and a doctor. Through it in the next town, which means Dot has 2 prescription pads working on her behalf simultaneously. The era calls this doctor shopping. The era does not call it anything else. There's no form. There's no registry. There's no database cross-referencing Dot's name against 2 different pharmacies in 2 different counties. It's basically the Sears catalogue, except the order pages are general practitioners who each spent about 2 weeks studying pharmacology in medical school and have a detail man's pen on their desk and a sample case in the bottom drawer. A detail man visited Dr. Fen last Thursday. His name is Gerald, and Gerald carries a leather case with combination locks, which is a level of security that seems significant until you notice that Gerald's job is to give the contents away. He sets 2 boxes of Dexamyl samples on the desk. He leaves a branded notepad, a branded pen, and a brochure showing a woman surrounded by housework who has been restored. The copy says, "To effective domestic function." The brochure ran in JAMA last month, next to an ad for a scotch. Gerald is pleasant, polished, and unfailingly cordial. Gerald is always pleasant. Gerald has no federal regulations governing what he can say or promise, because those don't arrive until 1962, and it is still 1961, and Gerald is having a very good quarter. Mrs. Carlton tucks the waxed paper deeper into her apron pocket. She says something about the Henderson's hedges getting out of hand, and you agree that they are, and the conversation moves in the direction of the Henderson hedges, until it becomes genuinely, naturally about the Henderson hedges. And both of you have forgotten, or agreed to forget, the thing that happened 30 seconds ago. The waxed paper sits in the apron pocket. The apron has a print of small red cherries on it. The cherries do not comment. You read the front page of the morning paper on the 5th of August 1962, and you learn that Marilyn Monroe died in her bed in Brentwood from a massive dose of Nembutal combined with chloral hydrate. The article names her physician. The article names the bottle on her nightstand. You fold the paper in half on the kitchen table, and you do not say anything to your husband about what you have just read, because what you have just read is in your medicine cabinet upstairs in a bottle the same colour and the same shape. The bottle is brown glass. The cap is aluminum foil sealed. It rattles when you pick it up. A small, dry and faintly clerical sound that means there are enough left. There are still enough. You have known this rattle for 2 years now. You know it the way you know the sound of the percolator and the third stair that creaks and the particular silence of the house at 3 in the afternoon. It is part of the texture of the day. It is not remarkable. Until this morning, when the front page made it remarkable. Her physician's name is Ralph Greenson. He had been prescribing for her for years. The article says this the way it might say she had a standing appointment at a salon, something routine, something professional, something arranged. The bottle on her nightstand contained Nembutal, which Eli Lilly sells in yellow capsules that everyone who knows calls yellow jackets, and which your neighbour Carol has taken for sleep since her second child was born, and which Dr. Fenn has suggested twice to you in the past 18 months, in a tone that made it sound like he was recommending a brand of dishwasher soap. Not urgent, just available. What gets written in the newspaper and what doesn't. The article runs on the front page, below the fold. It mentions the barbiturates. It mentions the physician. It does not mention that barbiturate overdose has been the leading method of suicide among American women for most of the decade. It does not mention that the prescription was written by a man who saw her, presumably, for 6 to 10 minutes at a time, in a room that smelled of isopropyl alcohol and examined table paper, and then wrote the number on a pad and tore it off and handed it across. The article does not have room for that part. It has room for the bottle. Your medicine cabinet has 3 bottles in it right now. One is yours. One is technically your husband's, but he hasn't touched it since February. One you're not thinking about this morning. You close the cabinet. The mirror shows your face, and then shows the cabinet again when you open the door a second time to confirm the count. 3. The count is 3. You close it. A woman named Sandra Heller reads the same article at her kitchen table in Shaker Heights and puts down her coffee cup without drinking from it. She is 31. She has been on Miltown since the spring of last year, and before that she had the green heart-shaped ones for about 4 months, and before that she managed on her own, which is what everyone calls it when you are not yet on anything. Managing on your own. Sandra manages on her own for a moment, sitting at the table with the folded paper, and then she gets up and starts the breakfast dishes because the children need to leave in 40 minutes, and the kitchen isn't going to do itself. The newspapers will write about addiction for the rest of the month. They will use the word tragedy. They will use the phrase troubled star. They will not write the word that Harris Isbell wrote in 1958 in the paper he sent to the FDA and Wallace Laboratories, the paper that documented 22 cases of severe meprobamate withdrawal, including 3 patients who had grand mal seizures, the paper that both offices received and filed without action. That word was dependence. The paper used it precisely and clinically and without drama, the way you would say the stair creaks or the cap rattles. Both offices filed it. Isbell's paper sat in a drawer somewhere, very quietly, while 1 Miltown prescription per second was filled at pharmacies across the country, all day, every day for years. You put the folded newspaper in the recycling bin under the sink. The morning continues. The percolator is done. The creak on the 3rd stair means one of the children is up. You turn on the kitchen radio while you peel potatoes on a Thursday afternoon, and you hear a Tennessee senator named Estes Kefova asking a man from Wallace Laboratories how much it costs to manufacture 100 Miltown tablets. The man pauses. The senator repeats the question. The man says 30 cents. The senator says the bottle in his hand retails for $3. You stop peeling. You hold the potato in your left hand and the peeler in your right, and you look at the radio for a long minute, and the potato dries out a little where you have stopped. The hearings run from 1959 into 1962. Kefauver is investigating the pharmaceutical industry the way you might investigate a neighbour whose car is nicer than his salary explains. Methodically, without theatrics, with receipts. You do the math on the back of a grocery receipt. The number is right. Let's talk about what the detail men never mentioned. A man named Gerald Holloway visits your doctor's office every 3 weeks, carrying a leather case with brass clasps, neat, polished, and faintly expensive. He leaves behind branded notepads, a pen with the Miltown logo embossed on the clip, and a sleeve of sample packets fanned across the desk like a card trick. He shakes your doctor's hand with both of his. He is not regulated by federal law. He does not have to disclose side effects, dependency rates, or the 1958 paper sitting in an FDA filing cabinet about patients having grand mal seizures when they stop taking the drug. Gerald Holloway leaves. Your doctor picks up the pen and writes your prescription with it. The Kefauver hearings surface that paper. Harris Isbell's 1958 report, 22 cases, 3 with seizures, sent to both the FDA and Wallace laboratories, is entered into the Senate record. Someone reads it aloud. Nobody from Wallace is surprised by its contents, because they already have a copy. They have had a copy for 4 years. The file drawer where it lived had a label. The label said nothing that would help you. The 1962 Kefauver-Harris amendments do eventually pass, and after that the detail men have to carry a different kind of paperwork. Efficacy now has to be demonstrated before approval. The FDA gets stronger enforcement authority. Francis Oldham Kelsey, the FDA officer who held the line on thalidomide for 2 years while the manufacturer resubmitted the same application with different fonts, receives a Presidential Medal from John F. Kennedy that August, which is a remarkable thing, a government award for the act of not approving something. The medal is real. The thalidomide is not in American pharmacies. Both facts hold at the same time. Back in your kitchen, the potato is peeled now. You put it in the pot. The radio has moved on to a weather report. Partly cloudy, chance of afternoon showers, highs in the mid-60s. Your brown glass bottle is in the cabinet above the sink, behind the iodine and the children's aspirin. It costs $3.80 at the pharmacy on Route 9. You didn't know what it cost to make. You know now. The knowledge doesn't change what the pills do, or what Thursday afternoon in a quiet house feels like without them. Kefauver doesn't win everything he wanted. The pricing provisions get stripped from the final bill before it passes. Wallace Laboratories continues. The bottle above your sink continues. The senator goes back to Tennessee. The radio moves to traffic. You read on the second page of the Sunday paper that President Kennedy has just given a medal to a woman named Francis Oldham Kelsey, who works at the Food and Drug Administration, and who refused to approve a sleeping pill called thalidomide. The photograph shows her at the White House in a small dark hat. She is not smiling for the camera. The article explains that she is the reason American babies are not being born with the deformities that babies in Britain and Germany are being born with. You cut the article out. You put it in the kitchen drawer. The drawer already has things in it. A bottle of Miltown. A bottle of something pink the doctor gave you in March for what he wrote down as nervous tension. A coupon for dish soap that expired in April. The article goes on top of the coupons under the Miltown, and the drawer closes. Frances Kelsey spent 2 years saying no. The application for thalidomide came to her desk in September 1960, submitted by a company called Richardson Merrill, which had already licensed the drug from a German manufacturer and was ready to ship. The file was thick. The letters from the company got increasingly pointed. She kept asking for more safety data. They kept saying she was being difficult. She kept asking. The word difficult is doing a lot of work in this story. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the drug had been on pharmacy shelves since 1957 under names like Contergan and Distavel, prescribed freely for morning sickness and insomnia. The British ad called it completely safe. 46 countries approved it. Frances Kelsey did not approve it. She had a specific concern about peripheral neuropathy, nerve damage, documented in a British Journal article she had read, and Richardson Merrill had not mentioned. She mentioned it. They filed a revised application. She asked again. The answer was still not enough. The medal arrived in August 1962. Kennedy gave it to her in the Rose Garden. The ceremony lasted 11 minutes, which is longer than most doctor's appointments at this point in American history, and considerably shorter than the time it takes to develop a drug dependency, which is a thing Frances Kelsey also understood. Here is what the newspaper does not say. The same year, Frances Kelsey is given a medal for blocking one drug. Roughly 32 million Americans, mostly women, are taking a tranquilizer their doctor prescribed in 6 minutes. The paperwork on those drugs got through fine. The paperwork on thalidomide had a woman reading it too carefully, and the paperwork on everything else had nobody reading it at all. A detail man named Gerald Pruitt is standing in your doctor's waiting room right now, or someone very like him. He has a sample case with a brass latch. Inside the case, a month's supply of Librium in blister packs, a branded notepad, 3 ballpoint pens, and a glossy, laminated, and faintly aspirational card showing before and after photographs of a woman who looks a great deal like you. The card says, "Effective relief of anxiety states in the homebound patient." Gerald doesn't leave literature about peripheral neuropathy. Gerald doesn't have any. The Kefauver-Harris amendments passed in October 1962. They required proof of efficacy before approval. They required informed consent. They gave the FDA more authority than it had ever had. The pricing provisions were stripped before the vote. The drug companies kept their margins. Frances Kelsey kept her medal. The drawer kept its bottle. You don't throw the article away. That's the thing. You keep it. You're not sure why. Exactly. She's not someone you know. She didn't do anything that affects your kitchen drawer directly. But there's a woman in a small dark hat who spent 2 years being told she was being difficult, and she was right, and the president gave her a medal for it, and that's on the second page of the Sunday paper between a furniture sale and the weather. You put the drawer back where it was. The bottle knocks once and stops. You decide on a Sunday that you will not take the morning tablet, and you do not. By 11 your hands are damp and your skin feels as if something underneath it is moving the wrong way, slowly, in long lines. By 2, you cannot sit in any chair for more than 4 minutes at a stretch. By bedtime your jaw hurts from a tightness you cannot release, and you lie on your back in the dark and you do not sleep. You sleep at 4 in the morning for 40 minutes. You wake at 6 and the tightness in your jaw is still there. Nobody told you this part. The prescription did not mention it. The 6-minute appointment did not have time for it. 4 minutes of small talk, 2 minutes of writing. The detail man who left the sample packets on your doctor's desk certainly didn't include a pamphlet titled "What Happens When You Try to Leave." The pamphlet does not exist. Harris Isbell knew. In 1958, Isbell, research director at the Lexington Narcotic Farm in Kentucky, which is exactly what it sounds like, published a paper documenting 22 patients in severe meprobamate withdrawal. 3 of them had grand mal seizures. He sent the paper to the FDA. He sent it to Wallace Laboratories. Wallace Laboratories made Miltown. The FDA filed the paper. Wallace Laboratories filed the paper. The paper had a very comfortable filing experience, and you had no idea it existed. Here your body becomes the documentation. Your hands shake with a fine, rapid, and faintly metallic tremor, like a tuning fork struck against something hard, and then held too close to your face. Your stomach refuses all food except crackers, and even the crackers seem uncertain. A headache sits behind your left eye with the patience and permanence of a very committed houseguest. You sweat through the night sheets, and then feel freezing. The window is closed. The window has always been closed. By 1960, admissions to Lexington for barbiturate and amphetamine dependency had tripled over pre-war levels. The intake records from that year have a rhythm to them. Housewife, 25 to 45, suburban, referred by family physician. The family physician who referred her was, in several documented cases, the same physician who prescribed in the first place. The form doesn't have a field for that. Mrs. Caldwell, in the bed next to yours in this hypothetical you'd rather not inhabit, sits very still and holds a washcloth against the back of her neck with both hands. She does this for an hour. She does not put the washcloth down. She has been here 11 days. And she told the intake nurse she started taking Dexamyl for weight management, then Miltown for the afternoons, then Seconal because the Miltown stopped letting her sleep. She stacked them the way you stack dishes practically, because the cabinet only holds so much. The dependency wasn't hidden so much as it was reclassified. Your doctor didn't call it dependency. He didn't call it anything with a sharp edge. Nervous constitution was available. Prone to anxiety was available. These were his words, and they landed softly, which was the point. The language existed to smooth the path back to the prescription pad, and the prescription pad was 12 inches from his right hand. Always, like a second phone. You take the Monday tablet. The jaw loosens within the hour. The tremor settles. You eat breakfast standing at the counter, which is what you always do, and the kitchen looks the way kitchens look. Flat, familiar, waiting. The Sunday was a piece of information. You received it. You filed it. You go to your physician on Monday morning, and you describe the sweating and the crawling feeling under your skin, and the night you did not sleep, and the way the jaw will not unclench. He listens for 90 seconds. He does not write any of it down on the chart. He tells you that the dose was probably a little low, that this is what your body has been telling him all along, and he writes a new script for a slightly higher dose, and he hands it to you across the desk. You take the script, you fill it on the way home. The prescription pad is the instrument of record here. Whatever you said in that room, the jaw, the sweating, the skin, lives nowhere else. The chart says nervous tension, persistent. The chart has been saying that for 14 months. It's a tidy diagnosis. It fits in a line. It doesn't require a follow-up question. Consider what he does know. He knows you by your married name. He delivered 2 of your 3 children. He has been your family physician since 1951, which means he has been prescribing things to you since Eisenhower's first term, and he considers himself a careful man. He finished 2 weeks of pharmacology in medical school, which covered dosing intervals, contraindications, and a brief Thursday lecture on dependency that everyone agreed was a little alarmist. He has a detail man who comes by on Thursdays now, a pleasant, brisk and faintly avuncular fellow named Gary who leaves branded notepads and a sample case, and who once brought actual coffee cake, which the receptionist appreciated enormously. Gary has opinions about Miltown. Gary's opinions are well documented and laminated. Your physician is not a bad man. That's the part nobody writes on the chart either. The new script is for a higher dose of meprobama. You know, the bottle is brown glass, and the tablets are white and they work the way they work, which is not the same as working. And here the word housewife becomes a clinical term, written by hand, in pen, on the diagnosis line. Housewife syndrome. The syndrome is not in any diagnostic manual because it doesn't need to be. It fits so neatly onto so many charts that it functions as its own category, a filing cabinet that accepts everything and sorts nothing. A 1962 JAMA survey will find that 20% of American women took a tranquilizer or sedative in the previous year. 9% of men. The survey does not ask why the numbers diverge. The survey is not designed to ask that. Margaret Voss, a name from no chart, which is how you know she was real, sits in a waiting room in Paramus, New Jersey in 1959, holding a magazine she isn't reading. She is 38. Her appointment is for 10 minutes. 4 of those minutes will be the doctor asking about her husband's job, which he finds interesting, and about the children, which he finds reassuring. 6 minutes remain for Margareta. She describes insomnia and a shortness of breath that comes on around 2 in the afternoon for no reason she can name. He nods twice. He writes anxiety state on the pad. He recommends she try not to let things get on top of her. He hands her a script for Dexamyl, the green heart-shaped tablet, stimulant on one side, barbiturate on the other, each half meant to moderate the other half, which is a pharmaceutical philosophy that sounds reasonable until you are the person moderating. Margaret takes the script. The waiting room chair accepts the next patient without comment. You fill the new script on the way home. The pharmacy doesn't ask questions. There aren't Questions to ask. The brown bottle goes in the kitchen drawer next to the other brown bottle, and the drawer closes, and it has been closing on the same 2 bottles for 14 months, and nobody has written that down anywhere either. You drive south for 9 hours with a small overnight case in the trunk and a folder of papers on the passenger seat that your sister has filled out for you in her careful schoolteacher handwriting. The address on the papers is a hospital in Lexington, Kentucky, that takes women like you and admits them under a federal program. You stop once for gasoline and once for coffee, and you do not stop for lunch. You arrive at the front gate at 4 in the afternoon. The intake form asks who referred you, and you write the name of your family physician without comment. The Lexington Narcotic Farm is the official name, though nobody on staff calls it that to your face. It opened in 1935 as a federal prison hospital for addicts, and by 1960 it has expanded its intake records to include a category that appears with increasing frequency: housewife, 25-FOLV, 45, suburban, referred by family physician. You are not the first. You will not be the last. The woman at the intake desk has seen this folder before. What brought you here then? Not the drive, the years before the drive. A family physician who spent 6 minutes with you per visit, 4 of which were small talk about the weather and your husband's work. A brown glass bottle with a cork that rattled in the kitchen drawer beside the dish towels. A diagnosis written in pen on a prescription pad, anxiety state, or housewife syndrome, or, once memorably, menopausal melancholy, which is a phrase that has the cadence of a Victorian novel and the clinical precision of a fortune cookie. You took what was prescribed because it was prescribed by a doctor, which in 1958 is more or less the same thing as prescribed by God. A nurse named Patrice hands you a clipboard and does not make eye contact. She has short fingers and moves with the brisk, careful, and unsentimental efficiency of someone who has given this clipboard to a great many women who drove here from a great many kitchen drawers. You sit in a chair that was uncomfortable in 1947 and has not improved. The fluorescent light above you buzzes at a frequency that suggests it has opinions about being there. At this point, the paperwork gets specific. The intake form asks how long you've been taking the medication. It asks how much. It asks whether you've tried to stop. There's a question about seizures, whether you've had them, which seems like the kind of question the form should have led with. Harris Isbell, the research director here, published a paper in 1958 documenting 22 cases of severe meprobamate withdrawal, including 3 patients with grand mal seizures. He sent it to the FDA. He sent it to Wallace Laboratories. Both of them filed it. Not acted on it. Filed it. The cabinet presumably closed with a soft institutional click. You haven't had a seizure. You have had 3 days without sleep, a persistent tremor in your left hand, and the sensation that the walls of your kitchen were breathing, which you did not mention to your husband. You mention it here, to the clipboard, in the small box provided. A doctor comes in. He is younger than you expected and carries a pen behind each ear, which seems excessive. He reads your chart for 45 seconds without looking up. He asks how your appetite has been. You tell him. He nods the way people nod when they've already written something down. He says the program runs 6 weeks. He says it like 6 weeks is a reasonable length of time to correct a problem that took 3 years to build, which is the kind of math that works only on paper. By 1960, admissions here for barbiturate and amphetamine dependency have tripled over pre-war levels. The ward you're shown to has 12 beds. 8 are occupied. The women in those beds are not unusual. They are not edge cases. They are the survey result. The 1 in 5 American women that the 1962 JAMA numbers will eventually name. The 2/3 of all tranquilizer prescriptions that went to women, because the other third went somewhere less legible. You unpack your overnight case. It has a small zipper on the side that your sister packed with toothpaste and a paperback. The paperback is a mystery. You appreciate the irony and set it on the nightstand anyway. You wait for your 6-month appointment in the lobby of your physician's office in 1970, and you pick up the copy of the Journal of the American Medical Association from the side table, and you turn to a page in the middle, and there is a full-page advertisement for a tablet called Valium. The advertisement shows a woman at a kitchen counter with the caption Mrs. Raymond is 35, and her world is a kitchen. You read the caption twice. You read the small print under the caption. You put the journal back on the table, and you do not pick it up again. The ad was submitted to Congress that same year during hearings on pharmaceutical marketing. A senator held it up. The room looked at it. Nobody in the ad looked back. Mrs. Raymond is facing the counter, which is the correct direction for a woman whose world is a kitchen. The caption doesn't say she's suffering. It doesn't say she's unhappy. It says her world is a kitchen, and leaves the rest to the physician reading the journal in the 6 minutes between patients. Consider what the physician is being sold. Exactly. Not Valium. Not diazepam. The physician is being sold a category of woman. Specific enough to recognize. Vague enough to apply broadly. 35. Married. Domestic. Presenting with something that doesn't have a clean name. The ad does the diagnostic work, so he doesn't have to. Mrs. Raymond already has her prescription. She's just waiting for your doctor to write your name at the top. Valium had been the most prescribed drug in the United States since 1968. It would hold that position for 13 consecutive years. Leo Sternbach synthesized it at Hoffmann La Roche in 1955, lost it in a lab drawer, rediscovered it in 1957, and by 1963 it was approved and moving. By the time Mrs. Raymond appears in that journal, Valium has lapped Miltown so thoroughly that Miltown sounds quaint, a relic from the era of Eisenhower and Milton Berle jokes and cocktail parties with clever names. The nurse in your physician's waiting room, her name is Patricia. She wears the same white shoes every day, the ones that squeak slightly on the linoleum on the left step only, sets a clipboard on the counter without looking up. The form asks about sleep, appetite, mood, and something listed as general outlook. General outlook. You consider that for a moment. The pen has a pharmaceutical company logo on it. The logo is a small green tablet. A typical appointment in 1970 runs about 8 minutes. That's 2 minutes longer than it was in 1957, which means medicine is progressing. In those 8 minutes your physician asks about your sleep and your energy and whether you've been feeling what he calls blue, and you say something approximate, and he writes on his pad, and the pad also has a logo on it, and the sample in the small paper envelope he slides across the desk matches the logo. He doesn't say the word Valium. He says something like "this will take the edge off," which is a sentence that has now been said to American women continuously for 25 years. The prescription costs about the same as a week of groceries. Hoffmann La Roche is doing fine. An estimated 32 million Americans, mostly women, were taking prescription tranquilizers at some point during the 1960s. That number doesn't include the amphetamines. It doesn't include the barbiturates. It's just the tranquilizers, as a category, standing alone. 32 million is roughly the population of Canada, which is to say that a country's worth of American women were taking something their doctor described as taking the edge off, prescribed in 8 minutes, dispensed in a brown glass bottle, kept in a kitchen drawer next to the rubber bands and the spare keys. The brown glass bottle sounds nearly empty when the drawer closes, even when it isn't. It has always sounded that way. You've stopped hearing it. You see a copy of a book called The Feminine Mystique on the rack at the drugstore in 1963, and you pay $1.95 for it, and you carry it home in the brown paper bag with the aspirin and the toothpaste. You read it in the kitchen after the children are in bed and your husband has gone upstairs to listen to the news. The author has interviewed dozens of women in towns, very much like yours, and most of those women are taking the same tablets you are taking, and the author calls the thing they share the problem that has no name. Betty Friedan spent years interviewing women in the suburbs of New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, and what she found is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It's the flat, even, and faintly carpeted silence at 3 p.m. in a ranch house where the dishes are done and the children are at school and there is nothing wrong, technically, and you feel nothing technically, and the bottle in the kitchen drawer is brown glass, and it is the first thing your hand finds when you open the drawer to get a spatula. The problem doesn't have a name, because nothing is officially happening. You are fine. The prescription says so. Friedan's book sold 1.4 million copies in its first year, which is extraordinary for a book about a feeling that doesn't officially exist. The women who buy it are not buying it because they feel terrible. They're buying it because they feel nothing, which is worse and considerably harder to explain to a doctor in 6 minutes. A woman named Carol, in one of the interviews, describes sitting down at the kitchen table at 2 p.m. and not being able to remember what she had planned to do there. She sits for 20 minutes. The Miltown is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Here, the book does something the pharmaceutical ads cannot. The ads show a woman restored. Friedan shows you what she's been restored to. The same kitchen, the same afternoon, the same drawer, with the same brown bottle. The restoration is the problem. You read this sentence twice. You look at the kitchen. The kitchen does not look back, but it's a near thing. What Friedan found in the medicine cabinets then, not the bottles themselves, those are already catalogued, already prescribed, already lined up in their brown glass rows from a laboratory in New Jersey. What she found is that the women taking them weren't weak. They were bored in a way that had been diagnosed as illness and treated with chemistry and handed back to their kitchens with the sharp edges blurred just enough to continue. Friedan doesn't say that in those exact words. She doesn't have to. The women she interviews say it themselves, in their kitchens, at 3 p.m, to a woman with a notebook who is writing it down. The problem that has no name gets 1.4 million copies. It gets shelved at drugstores next to the aspirin and the toothpaste and the brown glass bottles with the cork stoppers. You bought it in that same bag. The book knows what else is in the bag. It doesn't mention it. It doesn't have to. You sit in the office of a different doctor in 1973, and this one is a woman, and she is the first woman doctor you have ever sat across from in your life. She looks at the list of bottles you have brought in a small paper bag, and she sets the bag on her desk between you, and she does not pick anything up out of it. She tells you that you are going to come down off these slowly, and she tells you that it will take 8 months, and she writes the first new dose on a card and hands it across. The card is small. Index card small. Her handwriting is legible, which is already different. You fold it once and put it in your coat pocket, and you both sit there for a moment with the bag between you, like something that needs to be discussed at a reasonable volume. Let's talk about the bag. It contains 3 brown glass bottles, 1 orange plastic, 1 that came later, and a foil sleeve from something that was technically discontinued in 1971, but which your previous doctor had continued prescribing anyway, on the grounds that it was working, in the sense that you were still showing up. The bottles rattle when the bag moves. They have always rattled. You have stopped hearing it the way you stop hearing a refrigerator hum. Dr. Vasquez, calm, careful, and faintly skeptical, with a small framed certificate on the wall, not centered, slightly left, picks up a pen and asks you to walk her through when you take each one. Morning, you say, before the kids are up. Then 1 at 11, if the morning goes the way mornings sometimes go. Then 1 in the afternoon, the small one, the green one. Then at night, always at night, the red one, which you have taken every night for going on 6 years, and which you have not missed a single dose of, because the one time you tried, you lay in the dark for 4 hours with your heart skipping like a stone across a pond, and that seemed worse. She writes all of this down. She does not write the word nervous. She does not write tension or menopausal or housewife. She writes down what you actually said, which is the first time a person in a white coat has done that. Now 8 months is not a small number. 8 months is the length of a pregnancy. It is 2/3 of a school year. It is, in the terms your body will shortly introduce you to, a series of Tuesdays that feel like the first day of having the flu, distributed unevenly across a calendar that does not care. The reduction is careful and slow because Dr. Vasquez is aware, as your previous doctors were apparently not, of what happened to the 22 patients at the Lexington narcotic farm in 1958 when someone tried to stop meprobamate too fast. Grand mal seizures. Documented. Filed. Not mentioned at any of your previous 6-minute appointments. Marilyn Okafor, the receptionist, hands you a sheet of paper on the way out that explains what to expect. It is a single page. It lists things like fatigue, irritability, difficulty sleeping, and a phrase that reads heightened sensitivity to ordinary stimuli, which is a clinical way of saying that the light in the kitchen is going to bother you for a while. You stand in the parking lot reading it in November, and the light is already doing something. You are 38. You have been taking some version of something since 1961, which means you have been chemically managed for 12 years, across 4 physicians, 2 different addresses, and 1 divorce that everyone agreed was amicable. The bottles accumulated the way all household things accumulate, one at a time, each one reasonable on its own, until you look at the collection in a paper bag and it looks like a paper bag. You drive home. The card is still in your coat pocket. 8 months. You have done harder things than this, though at the moment you cannot immediately name one. And so we leave you in 1957, 6 minutes with the doctor, $3 at the counter, 1 brown glass bottle behind the cereal, and a diagnosis written in a hand that didn't look up from the pad. The Miltown martini is on the coffee table. Milton Berle is on the television. Mrs. Halloran is winking. Somewhere a detail man is leaving a leather case on the 3rd floor of an office building, and a pharmacist named Norbert is putting the child-resistant cap on a little crookedly. Thank you for coming with me tonight. The kitchen is yours. The pill bottle, if there is one, has your name on it. Close your eyes. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day fade, and let the rattle become the sound of a drawer nobody is opening tonight. Sleep well.